looks. And he's good looking too.
You
Nah,
ain't
he's
lying about
looking
that.
good now, Sam.
And we are live. I know everyone's sitting here commenting on this craziness, but hey, I know it looks a little different for everybody, and it's a little earlier start time. Again, it is 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. This show, this time of year, that means something big is going on. That is correct. This is the Mr. Football prequel of the Talking Prep show for Tuesday, December 6th. Again, Mr. Football is the state recognized best player in the state of North Carolina. This is one of my favorite shows of the year. I've got some of the guys here to give that to us. Again, it's going to be a big time show. I'm excited. Langston, drop that theme music, please. All right. So again, we got a little flavor of both of those. You know, we got, again, this is the Talking Prep show, but again, this is the special Mr. Football segment. So, hey, let's introduce the three finalists that we have. Again, the three finalists this year for the 2022 Mr. Football are Jalen Alexander Rayner, the quarterback of East Forsyth High School. We've got Jaden Davis, the quarterback from Providence Day School. And finally, Mason Fortune, quarterback of Millbrook High School out near Raleigh. Again, big time guys. Guru, real quick, let's talk about this. Again, three quarterbacks this year. I know, typically we are a little more diverse, but, what are your thoughts on having three quarterbacks and being a little less diverse in that kind of area this year?
Yeah, Coach Christ, after looking at the film and really studying these guys and really studying all of the guys, and I've got to tip my cap to you before we even get started with this Mr. Football Award, because those of you who don't know, Coach Jonathan Grice has done all the legwork for Sam and Dale and myself in putting together very precise analytical spreadsheets, and you've done your homework and you made it really easy for guys like Dale and Langston and myself to look at your work. So I've got to give you the kudos first and foremost for finding these guys. I know now why you're a great offensive coordinator, because I've seen how thorough you've been. But anyway, looking at these guys, these are the cream of the crop. You talk about the quarterbacks. They're not only the leaders of their team, but they've shown to be leaders in this state and their ability to not only read defenses and distribute the ball like a high-speed point guard in the NFL. They're distributing in the NBA, they're distributing the ball to the best players on their team and making their teams win. But these are just a who's who guy in their classes, their student bodies, leaders within their schools, their communities. Not only am I proud to see these young men on the football field, but I think they're going to be young men in their communities that we're going to be proud of in years to come too.
I appreciate that. And again, like I always tell, everybody, I don't do this without amazing help, whether it's on the gridiron or here on the show. Again, I've got Chris, who's here, the guru. I think he's the number one voice. He acts like he's not, but he Brett Favre's it every single year, where he's able to come back and give you, quality production, quality stats, and understanding everything that's going on within the state. I call him the CMS, but he's the football historian, and probably above and beyond. I feel like I learned everything, or every time I'm around him, I think I pick something up with Dale Ross there. And then we got the coach there, Sam Griner. Again, he's the star of the show, and he actually will be awarding Mr. Football tonight. So we're going to, guys, just so everybody paying attention, we're going to give each player their own segment. Again, each of these guys is deserving. I'll give you a little tidbit behind the scenes. This is the closest Mr. Football we've ever had. So I think, one of the things from my aspect, I wanted to highlight each of these kids individually. From a standpoint of just even highlighting their athletic prowess on the gridiron at the high school level. Some of you colleges, I know college coaches watch this, you need to be paying attention to these guys, as you'll be lucky if you're going to get, one of these guys to play for your program in the future. So I'm glad that we're able to have each of these guys on, and Guru, Sam Griner, and Dale Ross will be on the different segments for some of the different guys as well. So I'm excited for them to kind of lead those and talk to these guys and really give you guys a chance to know them. But first, let's get to Mason Fortune. One of our first finalists here. Again, we've had him on. Mason Fortune's been a Grice's gem. He's been a guy that we've been highlighting all year. He's had a great season. again, I know, he wanted to go a little bit further, a couple games further this year, but I feel like that, Mason, that you've really, stepped on the scene this year and really were able to distribute and show. It doesn't matter if it's Wesley Grimes last year, Nathan Leacock this year, or any of your guys that were, a part of the receiver crew that I know you hold near and dear to your heart, that you were going to make sure that you had amazing, amazing performances week in, week out. So I'll turn it over to the guru to lead this segment. Again, Mason, glad to have you on.
Thank you.
All right, Mason. Thank you, Coach Grice. But Mason, welcome here to the show. The first thing I want to say is a lot of us don't remember, Mason Fortune was actually very deep on our radar for the Mr. Football watch list last year as a sophomore. He was somebody that we very much knew everything about. I know that Coach Griner looked at the film. I know that I did. We knew everything about you. And, people could say, well, he's a product of a system quarterback. You had Wesley Grimes last year who just absolutely lit it up. But not only have you shown me through the film and just through watching you progress as a young student athlete and a great performer on the field, new cast characters. You endured a coaching change, actually a couple coaching changes, really a lot of shakeup in that Millbrook football team since last year. And not only did you emerge as an underclassman, you're still a junior. I still think your best football is ahead of you, and I cannot wait to see what you do next year. But you showed us this year what we all knew, that you were a tremendous football player. The way you distribute the ball, not only to Nathan Leacock, it's very well documented his success, but you've got a lot of guys there that you're able to give the football to, like a great point guard on the biggest levels. And Coach Griner, I want to throw it to you because you are our resident coach here on the staff. You know what it looks like to break down a great-looking quarterback on the field, and I know that you are full of a lot of superlatives you want to give this young man.
Yeah, definitely. I watched Mason's, his film, and the one thing that stands out to me that I think he does so well is this leadership. And all three of these guys are great leaders, but you have to be in the top three of Mr. Football. And Mason, outside of your wonderful hair that you got just flowing, the locks are just, it's like Samson. The better the hair, the better you're going to play. You got to keep growing it out for next year as well, correct? We're letting that thing go?
I don't cut it during football season.
All right, good. Well, you can't cut it now, man. You can't cut it now because you just literally ran out of time. You still be playing in the playoffs right now. You just ran out of time. You guys were on a roll. You just fell short. The time went away, and but you guys hit your stride late in that game. And I think if you had a little bit more time, a different outcome. But one of my favorite things about is that I have not seen a Phillip Rivers throwing style since you. Like, yours is not exactly his, but it has some unique qualities. When you roll out, your release is extremely fast. Like, I mean, if we had a stopwatch on your timing of how quickly you get the ball out, especially on the rollout, it's really, really quick. And I think it puts your guys in a position to make plays. Like throwing the comeback, out of all three guys, I think that deep comeback that you threw when you're getting to the sideline and having a tight angle, you were able to get it in that angle, even if they're covered really well, and put it to the outside part of their body, and they were able to make plays. And that's one of the main things that stood out to me watching your film. Outside of the intangibles, which make a great quarterback, the leadership qualities, your coach speaks super high of you. And you, like you said, you went through coaching changes to be able to do that and still lead. That's amazing. That's what Mr. Football is about. And it's amazing to see what you were able to do, because we all say good teams are led by the coaches. The great ones are led by the players. And you by far did that this year. Congratulations, Mason.
Thank you.
Well, tell us about your season, Mason. We've got a couple minutes here. Again, Coach Griner very well documented what he thinks of you with some of the intangibles that you have on the field with your mechanics and your ability to read defenses and roll out. But just tell us a little bit about your season and how you feel about the prestige of being up for this award.
Well, my teammates and I had a great year. The defense only gave about 14 points a game, I think, around there. My O-line did fantastic. They only gave about 1 sack a game. We made it past the third round for the first time in Millbrook history. I feel like I got more comfortable with the playbook and the offense.
What do you feel like now? We're still reflecting on this 2022 season. Obviously, you still got another year of football in front of you. I know that you guys were so close against a phenomenal football team in New Bern who have an opportunity to play for the championship this weekend. But how does that make you feel to be that close and to know you guys are on the right direction, but also to kind of leave just enough of a bad taste in your mouth to really maybe show us your leadership abilities, not only for this year, but leading your men into next year?
Well, next year I feel like I'm gonna get with my receivers off season and kind of throw with them to get our timing down and be right back where we'll be. And I'm definitely going to the game on Friday night to see who wins that one.
That's awesome. Hey, so Mason, again, part of this Mr. Football, we want to show, to what I felt like was your Mr. Football moment. And I think that Mr. Football moment was your game in the first round against Cardinal Gibbons. Hopefully you would agree there. We have your stats in that game. It's 23 of 37, 363 yards, and 3 big-time touchdowns. I think, again, against the reigning state champions, you showed up big time in that game, and I think really secured your spot in the finale for Mr. Football. Mason, could you talk about this game and just what you felt coming into there? Again, this was a big time game. I think it was either first or it may have been second round. I'm sorry, but you seem to come in locked in this game, and it seems like that on tape.
Well, my job was to get the playmakers the ball, and when I did that, they made huge plays for me. All I had to do was get outside the pocket, stay inside the pocket, throw the ball to them. They did whatever else they needed to do to get the dub.
And hey, Mason, talk to me a little bit about your coaching, the style of your coaches, sitting in the quarterback room, the receiving room with your receivers. Talent's only going to take you so far, but obviously, the countless amount of reps that we see on the practice field, the numerous hours that you have to spend on huddle looking at film of these guys. What is it that maybe you think is an X factor in your own game and your own abilities as a football player to read defenses, to learn the game, and to maybe be the distributor not only of the ball, but the information, the game plan, having cohesiveness with your wide receiver core and your offensive line, whether in blocking schemes or whatever. What is it like for you leading your team, not on the field or in the practice field, but kind of in that classroom setting?
Well, after every practice, we always have a film session with our coaches. So one day it'll be with O linemen, one day it'll be receivers, running backs, H-backs. I'll be in the room at all times, and we're serious, and we'll joke around it sometimes, and that's what's great about it.
That's awesome. Hey, Mason, again, hey, we're glad to have you on here. We wanted to highlight the show exactly why you deserve to be a Mr. Football finalist. And I think, just that one example as a part of a great season that you've had so far, is indicative of that. So, Mason, definitely thank you for that. We want to get to the other finalists, and we'll have you back on here at the end. So be sure to hang on. We want to make sure we have you there at the end when Coach Griner reveals who the Mr. Football is for 2022, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, let's get on another quarterback. Again, one that we are all well familiar with here, and that is Jaden Davis of Providence State School. Jaden, again, glad to have you on. How you doing?
Doing great. Glad to be on. Appreciate you guys.
Definitely. So again, you're the unique guy, I think, here out of the bunch. You were actually able to finish your season with the win, which is unique. Again, the NCHSAA state champion there for Division I. Just a quick question for me. Just talk about that again. I was there and able to see it. For me, I felt like and I felt like I asked you, and we've talked about this a little bit. It just felt like you just one of those you've been in that position where you could be you should be ready to take over. I felt like that was that first game I've seen you really take over and say, we're better than you. We're going to show up from play one to the last play of the game.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one of the games where we asserted our dominance and, where we played to our standard and didn't play down to anybody else's standard. We had lost to them once during the regular season. And I think that was kind of the only that Coach Greer didn't have to do any motivation throughout the week when we knew we got a chance to play those guys again. And once we got the opportunity to put our foot on our necks, that's what we did. So really, really excited to get the win and happy to be back to work today with my guys now.
So I've had an opportunity. First of all, congratulations for making it this far in the fantastic competition here. Lots of great players, but I got a chance to see you multiple times this year, and I saw a lot of progression in your game. And I would like to get a little bit of feedback from you on how you felt this season went from your first game to that wonderful game that you played in the state championship final. Could you maybe give us a little bit of feedback on that?
No, for sure. I think one of the things I can attest to is just kind of, me growing in the offense. I was a guy that transferred in an offense where, a guy kind of takes 2 to 3 years to kind of get fully accustomed to with Coach Greer. And I think once I kind of felt more comfortable in the offense, the team chemistry started to bond a little bit more. We started playing for each other. That's when we led. I think, what took my game to the next level was watching more tape, being able to decipher what the defense is doing, having a pre-snap read, which ultimately makes the game easier. The great talent we have at PD, our practices are sometimes, more competitive than the game, just because, you're going up against a top-rated DB, receiver, you're going up against a top-rated D lineman, and things of that sort. So I think, it's a testament to my teammates, my progression through this season, because they ultimately made me better through practice, which ultimately led to Friday nights.
Yeah, and Jaden, I'll just say what everybody else has said. First off, congrats for getting here. What impresses me most about you is just your very finite and superb accuracy. I tweeted out when the finalists were announced that you could toss it through a radio flyer tire, and I don't know if you know what that is. But it's like a little wagon that little kids have, and those tires are real small. But your accuracy is just super impressive to me. I know the game against Charlotte Catholic, when y'all scored that late touchdown, you put that ball in a position where only your receiver could get it. And, you just look at the NCHSAA final stats, or NCISA stats, 18 of 28, 350, and 6 touchdowns. I mean, those are mad numbers, dude. And so, hats off to you.
Appreciate it.
And Cam, that's a great segue. Jaden, let's pull that up. I mean, I think, for you, this was, again, to me, your Mr. Football moment. Again, you'd played Christian before, like we talked about, it hadn't gone the way you liked, but to have that game in that moment, and again, we keep going back to it, but I don't think that we should understate how big it is to do that in the biggest game. I mean, you're a high school kid. Again, you're a junior, to be that young and still be able to go out here and do what needs to be done in the biggest game of the year, I think is definitely important. One of the things, again, try to get to something we've talked about this game, I feel like ad nauseum, but I feel like early on you guys had you went through a little bit. I feel like they brought some pressure, kind of, got to you a little bit. So, I mean, what were some of the adjustments that you guys made from that first drive or two to really take it to easy street like it was the rest of the game? Because it felt early on like they kind of had your number and brought some pressures maybe you guys weren't expecting.
No, for sure. We knew with the style of defense they run, they were going to send pressure and kind of bring more than we could block. And our game plan going into that was kind of getting the ball out of my hands quickly and, getting to the playmakers in space and letting them make plays. And I think, the first drive, obviously the first drive, that's kind of been, our kryptonite this whole season, just kind of getting a feel for what the game's going to be like. I think once we kind of got it going and started, O-line started picking up their guys, and I didn't get touched the rest of the night. I feel like I have the best O-line in the country. Those guys know I have their back, they have mine. And then, when you have Jordan Shipp and Channing Goodwin and Brody Barnhart, Liam Gould, Jaden Holler, things those guys, it's pretty fun to play with. So it's all praise to them. All I have to do is give them the ball and let them be the superstars.
So I'm going to ask a question that, first of all, you played a great game in the championship. Great players that's come up and rise in big-time games. You definitely, that's an ad nauseum kind of situation there. But I wanted to go back earlier in the season in that winning touchdown pass in the Catholic game.
Yes, sir.
Tell me what you saw. And, I mean, you threw that into, was triple coverage, wasn't it?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it was. Yeah. The read wasn't what Coach Greer would have liked. But, I think, personally, that's where great players shine. And I saw a window, and I feel like I could fit the ball in any window. And once I saw it, it kind of happened in slow motion. Stepped up a little bit. Once I saw his hand flash, I put it in a place where only he could get it. Try to give him a chance to make a play on the ball, and he did. And that was, one hell of a catch as well. So Coach Greer probably didn't like the read, but he probably liked the outcome of it. But so.
I can hear him now. That's one of the best passes I've seen this season.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Jaden, I feel like, we've talked to you a whole bunch, this year. I mean, hey, congrats on a great season. I feel like we've got a couple for you, couple Mr. Football moments. You've done well. And anybody goes Providence Day for a game, definitely right there behind the concession stands, Jaden's dad and some of the other dads. I think that's the best seat in the house. I know Dale was on the field and wanted to go down there. Dale, I was good over there. I think they were just as much, just as much entertainment as the game, cheering on their sons as they were definitely doing, playing excellent. And that was fun, watching that. And your fam and everybody was really proud of you guys. So, hey, Jaden, hold tight. We're going to definitely announce the winner after this. Please do not, get off there. We'll bring you back on shortly. Okay.
All right. Appreciate it.
All right. All right, now let's get our third finalist on here. Again, the man, Jalen Alexander Rayner, quarterback of East Forsyth. I think quarterback, do it all, Mr. Playmaker. I think the superlatives are endless for you, Jalen. You're a guy that's been on our radar from step one. Again, I'm from the 336 myself, so I'm well aware of East Forsyth and the things that you guys have done. I just want to start there actually for you, talk about that community. Let our guys know, again, this is, a lot of us are down here in Charlotte. I'm from that area. I know what the nest is like on a Friday. I know how that community can go crazy and really turn up. So talk about your area and just that support from your community and how that motivates you every Friday.
Our community is great. It's like everybody is just like, it's a football town. Everybody comes out and supports every weekend, every Friday night. So everybody loves the football and they show it every Friday night.
Oh, I agree 100%. So again, even with that, talk about your year. For me, I feel like you guys knew coming in, Chris Hughes, guru right there in the middle of the screen. He's been touting y'all all year. Like, let's be very clear. He's been on here. He came on there, our first show and was like, look, East Forsyth's got it. Coach Willard, Coach Vaughn, Coach Bill, all those guys are tapped in, ready to go. You guys were ready to play from day one, and I think you guys did that. So, what was that mentality going into summer workouts? I know I was there at your last game against Huff last year, knew you guys were a team to watch out for, but it felt like you guys were on a mission this year. It was a little different this year. Talk a little bit about that.
Definitely coming off of last year, just knowing we came up short and we were that deep in the playoffs, it just gave us the motivation and chip on our shoulder for the whole season and push us through it.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought y'all had a chip on your shoulder, and I thought it showed on film. It was a little misleading at times. The competition, you sometimes played teams that just weren't in your stratosphere. They know other way of putting it. And sometimes I felt like you guys were just, I don't want to say on cruise control, but I don't feel like you was also playing like you were down in the fourth quarter every week. You didn't have to put up those mind-boggling numbers because you were able to. A lot of times you guys didn't even play four-quarter games as the starters. So, I think that your numbers could have been that much higher. But tell us, just how Coach Willard and kept you guys focused, playing some teams that maybe wasn't, again, on the level with what you guys were throughout the year, and how you was able to remain focused, but also kind of keep putting up some big numbers and just kind of keeping a 1 week at a time, going 1-0 every week and trying to lead your team during that time.
Just knowing our ultimate goal was getting to the state championship. It was like, no matter who we were playing, we were always trying to put our foot on their necks and keep going. We're better in ourselves every week, and we weren't really focused on our opponent. We were focused on ourselves and getting the win.
Jalen, I think that, just breaking down your film, I even watched it again before we got on the show. Really appreciated your talents. Having over 4,000 yards. I mean, that's so impressive. I mean, that's so hard to do. It's pretty amazing. 4,200 actually, and 57 TDs and very minimum interceptions. Just doing the stuff that you do. You're a little bit more unique in the aspects of the quarterback play with your feet. Talk about, when do you think about putting the ball down, tugging it away, and running? What goes through your mind for that process?
I say, like, when it's a pass play, I'm trying to pass first, but if I have a chance, I turn to a running back when I break the play, and I'm trying to score every time.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things everybody has to account for that helps you in the passing game as well, is they have to account for you in the box. There's no way they're going to play with this 5 or 6 man box most of the time, and I think that you were able to take huge advantage of that. A lot of your big plays, when you were throwing the ball or throwing it down the field, did you have a particular target that you were looking for when you were looking downfield?
Definitely my man, Sean Brown. He's committed to deep, but that's my man, definitely.
No doubt. Now, Sean was the one that got hurt in the game versus Huff, correct?
Yeah, that was him.
What quarter did he get hurt in?
It was right before halftime, like 2 plays before halftime.
I got you. Well, you kept your composure in that game. You did a fantastic job. And, I'm really proud of you. You did a good job.
Thank you.
All right, so let's cue your Heisman moment. And so we had Jaden Davis with the last one, but I think you burst on our scene against Northwest Guilford. And we know, again, Northwest Guilford went deep into the playoffs, but that game one, you let everybody know you were here to go. Again, I think you were 12 of 26, 170 yards and 3 touchdowns, and 343 yards rushing. I said that right, 343 and 4 touchdowns. Man, you came out of the gate and were a guy that was on our radar from game one. So talk about that. I mean, most guys kind of have to warm up and kind of get the flow of the season. I feel like you came out there on cruise control against a very good Northwest Guilford team. Talk about this game if you can kind of remember it. I know it's been a while, but just it seemed like you had everything clicking.
Well, these highlights are actually from Roseville, but
I mean, it didn't matter in that game. Shoot, y'all won. Y'all put a 50 burger on them as well. But just, I mean, we may not have the highlights, but talk about just that game. And I mean, you can even talk about this one because you guys were locked in very early, and just it looked like you guys were just on a different level to start the season.
Definitely, we just throughout the off season, we were working all season, knowing that we had a common goal, and it shows throughout the whole season actually. But we came up short, but you can definitely tell that we were really motivated for a certain goal.
Oh, I completely understand that. I mean, Dylan, thank you for coming on here. We're going to go ahead and bring everybody back on the screen. I was glad that we were able to highlight everybody. Jalen, again, I know Arkansas State is happy as I don't know what for having you. And I think those other schools are going to regret that when you put 300 yards rushing on them just as everybody else. So we're excited to see what all three of you guys are going to do, whenever you make your big-time decisions. I know, Jalen, you already have. But again, without further ado, we're going to give this to the star of our show, Coach Sam Griner. He's going to he has the ballot. He's going to announce the winner of Mr. Football for the 2022 season.
All right. Mr. Football 2022. Congratulations to all you guys, by the way. All of y'all deserve it. The winner is Jaden Davis, Providence Day.
Hey, I want to thank Jalen Alexander Rayner, Mason Fortune. Hey, Jalen, you're headed to Arkansas State very soon. I'm excited to see what you're going to do. I've heard that they are like literally checking on you to make sure you're still coming because of what they've received and the player that you are. So we're ready to see you on Saturdays. We're excited for everything that you have coming. So again, please keep in touch with us. Feel free to check in on us on the show. Thank you for coming on.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it.
No problem. Mason, hey, we know again, you've got another year. You've been holding down the Eastern, state, North Carolina. You've been putting up insane numbers. Again, it was a game short this year of reaching your ultimate goal. We're excited to see you this coming year, and we already know the schools are going to be lining up very soon to see what you can do for them on Saturdays. Mason, thank you for coming on.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Congrats, Jaden.
Appreciate you.
Jaden, hey, again, this was one of the toughest decisions we had. We had 3 amazing finalists, and you were able to win. So, Jaden, I'd like to give the floor to you, Lance, to give him the one shot. Give all of your thanks, and definitely want to hear from you about you being named Mr. Football for the 2022 season.
Yeah, for sure. First off, just want to appreciate you guys for giving me this award. Just all the great players that's come before me and won this award. It's truly an honor. First off, all glory and grace, I'm a Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I'm a God that leads my life by faith. And want to give thanks to my family. I come from a big family, hardworking household with 5 siblings, and both parents in my household. They've always worked hard and instilled hard work in me. That's kind of just wanted to pay it forward. For the youth coming up and other guys as well. I also want to give a shout out to the other 2 guys, and Jalen and Mason. Those are great players. Been keeping up with their game the whole season. Wish them nothing but the best. Very talented guys. I also want to give a big shout out to my teammates. I'm not a guy that's big on individual awards because I feel like the game of football is so much about a team sport, and that I wouldn't be in this position if it wasn't for my O line or the receivers catching the ball or the defense getting stops and getting the ball back in my hands to go down and score for them. So, a great shout out to my teammates. I'd do anything for those guys. Huge shout out to, Coach Greer and the whole PD coaching staff along with Coach Cater. They molded me and helped me get to the position I am today. Big thank you to my quarterback coach, Anthony Boone, with QB Country, and the quarterback coaches I've worked with. They served as mentors to me as well. Believed in me when I kind of, I didn't believe myself sometimes. They've always been in my corner. I have a pretty tight circle and it's going to stay that way. And that's kind of what's gotten me this far, and just going to keep working hard. So appreciate you guys.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Jaden. We appreciate you coming on. We congratulations to you on winning this 2022 Mr. Football Award. I'm going to go back to August when Coach Grice and I had you on for the Talking Preps OT segment way back in the beginning of the year, and I knew right then and there that you were going to be a special young man, that Providence Day and everybody on that program was up for a big year, and you and your team delivered. So thanks again for coming on, and once again from all of us here at Talking Preps, congratulations.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys.
You owe your O-line wings, they said. They've been texting.
No, I definitely got them. Yeah, I did.
Daniels, you won the 20-piece. I know it.
Hey, yeah. Yes, sir.
Hey, Coach Grice, so we know how hard a decision this was to make for picking a Mr. Football here for 2022 here at Talking Preps. Can you give us a little bit of insight into the details about how we were able to declare Jaden Davis Mr. Football?
Yeah, I mean, this was the closest Mr. Football that we've had to this point. Again, how close you say? We literally had 1 point separating Jalen Alexander Rayner and Jaden Davis as Mr. Football. I mean, it was razor thin. I mean, I think these three players separated themselves literally from a few weeks ago, and that was the difference. One of the big things that I focused on, again, I think both of these teams, Providence Day and East Forsyth, really separated themselves from their competition in a lot of games. So we wanted to focus on really their top five or five of their most impactful games. When you look at Providence Day, you look at the two Charlotte Christian games, the one they lost in the state champion. You look at Weddington, who again made it to a regional final. Charlotte Catholic that lost in the second round. You look at those games. You look for East Forsyth, they played Huff. You're talking about Mount Tabor, another big opponent that they played. Roseville, Northwest Guilford, Huff. Like I said, so you really focus on those two, and it became a 2-horse race once we did it. I mean, you look in those 5 games. Jaden had almost 2,000 total yards, 21 touchdowns. Jalen Alexander Rayner had 1,500 total yards and 18 touchdowns. So you saw a little bit of a gap, and even at Providence Day, everybody wanted to look at the competition. I focused on that again. Raven Gap beat AC Reynolds. We clearly here in the 704, we know AC Reynolds as a team that beat Chambers and Butler. Christian, really took Weddington to overtime. We know about Charlotte Catholic, again, tied for the lead. So, we know East Forsyth played some quality and big time teams. We wanted to dispel that notion that Providence Day also didn't have that competition. So comparing them against their quality competition and really taking a look at their key games and their performance in those big games, I think was the difference. But again, this was one of the biggest or closest races that we had, really being razor thin. I'll open it up for any other discussion there.
I'm going to jump in, and I know you may recall, Grice, I really struggled with this because I can't believe the amount of struggle that my mind went through on these 3 players. It was so very close and so hard to make any kind of decision. And again, Grice, I got to give you a lot of kudos for all the work that you did of putting all that information together to help evaluation.
I just realized I was on mute, guys. I'm sorry. I was trying to tell Jaden he could go ahead and sign off. Guys, I will echo what everybody said. Grice put in an enormous amount of work on this. I wanted to recuse myself because my son did go to Providence Day, and there was a Providence Day kid that was up for the award. So I didn't want there to be any sense of impropriety. Grice, you will say I had nothing to do with this, right?
Right, correct.
It was
he did a great job of relaying his information to us too. He broke a lot of things down, asked our opinions.
Yeah.
I think it really came down to the big games. That was the best way to compare it because you did have a private school candidate and you had public school candidates, and the comparable games of what Grice did was the fair thing to do. What we tried to do was break down the bigger games and see what happened.
I think he was going a different way until he came up with that kind of metric, which I thought was kind of genius. I've been doing all-star teams for 3-4 decades. I've never thought about doing it that way. So Grice, thanks for doing that. We're going to put you back again next year because you did it so well. So you just earn yourself some more work.
We're working forward. But again, hey, I just want to say thank you to everybody. Again, I don't do this alone. I reach out to you guys as trusted confidants and experts in the high school football space. It's always tough with this because, again, none of the three choices would have been bad. I mean, I don't think anybody. I can't wait to see Jalen Raynor terrorize those Group of 5 schools that are on his schedule.
That dude is incredible.
And then, of course, we know Jaden Davis, wherever he chooses to go, is going to be excellent. And I think Mason Fortune is going to really come out there and throw for 1 trillion yards. And next year, again, I can't wait for Jaden Davis, Mason Fortune, and the next guy that's really going to step up. So, it's one of those situations where
I don't know if Millbrook and Providence Day filled up the schedules for next year, but I wouldn't mind,
Oh, what a game.
Hey, that might not be bad. In Millbrook, having their coach, they'll have a little bit better understanding of who they are coming into next year because they were new this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, we still got a little business to get to with these state championship games coming up. So let's hit rapid fire and jump right into it. I think Gary is first up. I got to bring Gary back into the screen here, though. Hold on, Gary. Wait a minute. There you are. Gary, how would you improve the transfer portal? Wait. I'm sorry. I'm wrong. I'm supposed to ask about Deion Sanders to Gary, but I'm asking you, how would you improve the transfer portal, Gary?
I would move the date in which players could declare until after the bowl season. I think that's really going to have a big effect on the bowls this year, where you have kids in the transfer portal. They're going to opt out not to play in the bowls. And I think you already running into the players, the senior players or players that are considering the draft are going to opt out. So I would wait till after the bowl season before I would allow players to enter the transfer portal.
Interesting. And Ken, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely move the date back. There's already, a couple, I know over 1,000 players in the transfer portal already. But like Gary said, a lot of guys are, not going to play in their respective bowl games. I know it's a little bit different situation, but Ohio State's best receiver is not playing in this college football playoff because he's declaring for the draft. Like I said, a little bit different scenario there, but just, keeping guys in their bowl games is key. And I think, when you have them dropping out of their bowl games, it's really bad for college football.
Alex and Chris, real quick, I just wait for you guys, like 30 seconds each.
Oh, did you say eliminate the transfer portal? I'm sorry. How do we improve the transfer portal?
How do we improve the transfer portal?
2 simple things. Number 1, there has to be a documentation. You can call it a case statement or whatever. There's got to be a mitigating circumstance statement that goes before a committee for review, and the 1-year sit-out has to be reinstated.
Okay, Chris?
Gary, Alex, both of you are phenomenal using that Carolina education for great use. I appreciate you, fellow Tar Heels. But, I got to say this. Alex, I agree with you. I don't like the transfer portal, but it's a necessary evil. There's very good pros and a few cons to it as well. But, Gary, I think you hit the nail on the head. You know what? Let's push the date back for declaring to after the bowl games, and even more. I've seen in the past 5 or 6 years how this has just so much affected the recruiting angle, and obviously, that's kind of my cup of tea and covering the recruiting over the years and how it has hurt recruits going in. I would rather see the portal date maybe even somewhere closer to the National Signing Day, to where it is not hamstringing some of these high school seniors coming in to try to be signed by these colleges.
Yeah, it's killed high school recruiting for sure. Absolutely. All right, Dale, it's time for you. I got to find your theme music. It's time for your 3 things.
Oh, nice Lincoln experience first.
Yeah, what happened at East Lincoln, man?
Oh, man. When I put that down, Langston, it was not football related. It was getting to the game, and an idiot.
That's football related. You got to get there to enjoy it.
I did actually. Once I got past that bad experience with an individual who I hope you're watching. I'm the guy who was coming back in the parking lot and you cussed out because you wouldn't move over. Anyway.
No, let's hear about that.
So Langston, the game was standing room only.
Right.
It was hard to find a place to park. People were driving between trees and driving down into the, down into gullies and
Yeah.
just
There's not a
parking
lot of
everywhere.
places to park over there. Yeah.
Right. So I'm riding around trying to find a place to park, and I go up in a parking lot, and I can't go around. I have to turn around and come back out. Well, the parking lot, the lane that I'm driving down, could handle 3 cars, but this guy in this big SUV is like coming down the middle of it, and he won't move over. But I could squeeze by, so I went to squeeze by, and I hope you're watching. It was a Tahoe, I believe.
What color
And
Tahoe?
he cussed.
What color
He just
Tahoe?
threw the words out. After I got past that, I don't know if he was a South Point or East Lincoln, but I tend to believe East Lincoln because all the South Point people were wearing their red, and they were really showing out.
Right.
But I tell you what, I think the only time I've encountered this kind of a situation was at a Kannapolis West Rowan playoff game, where it was so many people. They were down on the track.
I remember that.
Yeah, you remember that. That was one heck of a
Kannapolis
night.
beat down that night.
Yeah, there was also a fight in the line. We could talk about that sometime. Overall, it was a great experience. Get past that first experience. It was a fantastic environment with crowd, game, defense. I love defense, and you couldn't have asked for a more defensive game. It was kind of funny because the guy that I was there with, he tells me when they were up 14-0, he says, "Oh, I'm about to get my score." And I said, "What's that?" And I said, "Did you say you thinking 21-0?" He said, "No, I just figured a 21-point spread." I said, "There ain't gonna be no 21-point spread." And sure enough, it wasn't.
We're going to hear from one of the heroes of that game later on. But I'm interested in your second topic, Dale, because Grice is on, and Grice likes to throw that puppy around.
Yeah, and
don't let him fool you. Grice daggone runs the buck sweet, just like daggone Griner used to. I don't want to hear it.
He's got a great running back too. I love his back.
Sammy had him on last week.
Yeah, he is a great ball player. But we do have a lot of running teams making it. And is that a real surprise? If it out of the East, it's not a surprise unless it comes out of a Raleigh. If they come out of Raleigh, but when you get out of Raleigh, you do tend to see more running teams, and you see more running.
I got to be honest. When I do Grice's gyms with Grice and Sam, we pull up these highlights of these dudes in the mountains, and they're like running spread and throwing it all over the yard. That surprises me. I mean, I don't know. I'm shocked actually.
Well, the spread is coming into play. In fact, what South Point needs to do is find a way to spread just a little bit, and they might have been in a better situation. So there's no doubt that.
Yeah, when Catholic runs a spread, I mean a version of it. I was like, wow, Catholic's
exactly.
Like Catholic receivers right
here. But it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Run teams versus passing teams, because we're going to see a bunch of that this coming Saturday.
All right, so you must be surprised that those CMS teams are practicing this week.
It's not just that they weren't practicing this week; they weren't practicing last week.
True that.
I think that's an even bigger thing. Now, we did have Weddington practicing, so they're not CMS, but not having a CMS team in a regional even is kind of a shock. It's not the first time in the last 2 decades that we've not seen a CMS team in the state championship, but they're at least around in late rounds of the playoffs. But
yeah, Alex talked about it last week. It's 99 since the team had not been
1999.
Yeah, exactly. So it's it's just one of those years. It's good to see. The state is getting bigger in population. That's spreading athletes out more across the state.
Yeah.
I also think we're seeing a decline in the number of participants of players, especially in the 4A realm. And I think that's kind of balancing things a little bit, that you go to these CMS games. I don't see the big rosters like we used to see back in the early 2000s.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
So
good point. Well, I want to go back to our rapid fire. I'm sorry, guys. I did not do these graphics, so I'm a little bit discombobulated about it. Before I jump in, and Karen was wanting to know, she wants to congratulate the 3 finalists of Mr. Football. There will be All Observer Defensive Player of the Year. It'll come out around Christmas, Karen, when we do our All Observer team. So we will do that, All Observer offense and defense. And we're going to try to make it really special this year. I don't want to give it away. We're trying to make it really special this year. Brian says go blue. Jaden did have you guys didn't ask Jaden about his choice of cleats in the state championship game. He had on those Michigan cleats in the state championship game. I thought for sure one of you guys would ask about that. But Baker Mayfield, Gary, did he get a fair shot with the Panthers?
Yes, he definitely got a fair shot. The dude just can't play, man. Can't play.
He got a fair shot.
He can't play.
All right, Grice, Baker Mayfield, who Gary says can't play, may end up on your team to replace Mr. Irrelevant, who's currently your quarterback at the 49ers.
See, that, Langston, that's how I know that you work hard and that you're amazing, because you didn't see that he was already picked up by the Rams, who need help because Bryce Perkins is awful. He is not coming to the 49ers.
He went to. I did not know that. He went to the Rams.
He went to the Rams.
Yeah, it came out earlier. Yep.
Okay.
I think again, Baker is
running around his works.
But I mean, the Rams were off at quarterback right now too, with their starting quarterback out. I think the NFL is really. But you look at, I was talking actually with somebody about that today. And the teams outside of the big time quarterbacks all have question marks. I mean, the NFC outside of, you got a first time guy in Jalen Hurts that's the quote unquote, front runner for the MVP potentially. You got Kirk Cousins, you got Brock Purdy, you got Tom Brady with an awful Bucs team. You've got Dak Prescott. These are the playoff teams and the quarterbacks. Like the NFL is moving away from quarterback. Get a competent guy, build a team around him, go play ball.
So the Panthers should keep Sam Darnold.
You're going a little farther.
Your tongue doesn't work now. Who are your way too soon candidates for North Carolina's best team or teams in 2023?
Okay, so there's some chat going on. So some people have got some comments too. So I'm going to leave it to one.
Okay.
And mine is Independence, a very young team, very well coached, played very well. I look for them to make a lot of noise next year.
Aaron Belt comment coming in 3, 2, 1. Yeah. Chris.
I've got to concur with Dale. I don't even think it's close. If I was to do a preseason 4A ranking today, Independence would be far and away be the number one team in the state. Quarterback Justin Little, sophomore quarterback, 3,000 plus yards passing, 27 touchdowns, ran the ball for him. He's a dual threat guy. And look at Coach DJ McFadden. He learned on the job. It's well documented some coaching, calls that he made. Young coach, and he's a Patriot. Played for TK, who by the way won another championship. No surprise there. I think Independence is going to be the leader in the clubhouse, and I don't think it's going to be close.
Alex.
Well, I certainly can agree with what Dale and Chris have said, most definitely, for all the reasons that they said. One team I'd also like to point out, too, just for the sake of being on the radar, is Reidsville. Reidsville had a very quiet, per Reidsville perspective, 14-1 run to the state final. I mean, this Reidsville team flew under the radar a little more than Reidsville generally does, right. but just took care of business week after week after week and dispatched of an elite Burns team in the state semifinals. Reidsville returns quarterback Al Lee, who just very quietly was efficient with a better than 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio this year. Returns a couple of stout running backs to balance that aerial attack that Reidsville has. But I want you to mark down this name too.
Okay.
Kendre Harrison. All right. 6'8", 230-pound, ninth grader.
What? He'd be playing. He'd be 7 foot.
And to tag along with what Alex said, I spent that game. I was in Reidsville Friday night, obviously covering the game. I spent the game texting with Gunnar Brewer, who we all know is one of the premier recruiting coaches in the United States. And I was talking to him about this young freshman, Kendre Harrison. He is an NC State prodigy. I had an uncle that played for the Wolfpack. I feel like they may have the early advantage with him. But this young man right here has a grown man's body, but he is so raw in his play. I mean, it was phenomenal watching him. I've got so many clips I got of him watching him on the field. His technique, his ability to jump through the roof was just unbelievable. He made some touchdown grabs. I was like, whoa, I had to pick my jaw up off the floor. But that guy very much may be on the Mr. Football Award watch list as a sophomore, and he may be one of the best freshman football players I've ever seen in a long, long time.
Ooh, that's high praise. I gotta say, Tarboro had a bunch of young kids. We kept putting on fresh faces, Grice's gyms every week. See, I learned Grice doing that stuff to you on the weekends. Grimsley, my man, Mitchell Summers and Grimsley, they're young. They got a lot of kids coming back. Weddington's got a lot of kids coming back, but none of you guys said Providence Day. They got quarterback, receivers. They got David Samuels, #1 sophomore period in the country. I think they could definitely be a top 50, 60 type of team nationally next year. And Cam, you had one. Who was the one you had?
I said Mallard Creek. Don't sleep on those guys. If they can figure out that offense out, that defense is solid. They return Trey Robinson, their quarterback, who played the majority of the year while Justin Wheeler was hurt. So, don't sleep on Mallard Creek.
So, Jason, I didn't even think Providence Day because, I don't know, we're sitting here thinking NCHSAA, I guess. They're kind of like in a different category, national.
I agree. And another team that I think is going to be on the radar is Crest. Don't forget about the Chargers. I think they're coming up out of the Western Piedmont. And I'm going to throw out Sam's West Charlotte Lions. I think they're going to be pretty doggone good too.
I'm sure he will. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
My camera dipped out again. All right, we're going to go to possible NCHSAA expansion. They're talking about potentially going to 7 classes. And Cam caught up with the boss lady at the press conference this weekend.
All right, Mr. Tucker. So with the current buzz about possibly expanding into 5 different classifications, how likely is that to come to fruition, or is it still a little bit of a stretch or kind of in the works?
Well, obviously, as was said in our media briefing the other day at the conclusion of our board meeting, right now it's probably too premature to say that, yes, this is going to happen, because we do have a balloted item that will need to go out to the membership. Bylaws dictate what we do. Bylaws right now say that we have 4 classifications. But with the growth in the number of schools we've had, especially over the last 5 to 6 years, having more classifications seems a real possibility. There was a vote several years ago that failed. And so right now we're in the midst of the same kind of alignment that we've had traditionally. So once this ballot goes out sometime during the mid part of 2023, then the membership will have an opportunity to speak. And that bylaw proposal suggests that we would have no more than 64 teams per class. And so that as we continue to grow, right now we have 432 schools in our association. So we're looking upwards of 5 to 6 classifications. So if that amendment does pass, then that would mean that, yes, we would have to expand. Now, does it mean we would expand for all sports? I believe the way the ballot is intended is that it would be based on the number of schools you have for the number of schools that participate in that sport.
Okay.
All right. Well, you heard it from the boss lady, Grice. Do you like this proposal to go to 64 teams, a cap at 64 teams and 7 classifications?
I love it. It's actually what a lot of other states are doing. I mean, I think that, is one of the things that we need to look at. I mean, when we look at our 4 classifications, I think that's something that's not sustainable and shouldn't, only occurs here, which is the funny thing about it. I have coaches, friends that are coaches in other states. And, we're one of the only states that has a school with a population of 1,900 kids playing another school with over 3,000 kids in the same playoff classification. So that needs to change in any other, any circumstance. But I think 7 is a great first step. Again, if we determine we need to consolidate it at any form there, we can. But I think any expansion towards more classifications provides an opportunity for more teams to really go out there and show what they can do.
Sam, I'm curious about what you think, because you're a former 4A school, now playing 3A, so who knows where you'd end up in this type of mix. But how do you feel about 7 classes?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't care. You can make it one classification. You can make it 4. You can make it 8. We're going to do the job we're supposed to do at West Charlotte. I'm just going to play teams we're supposed to play, and we're going to get better, and it doesn't matter who's there.
All right.
You want the answer? That's what it is.
All right. Let's hear from the guru.
Hey, I think 7 may be a little bit extreme. I have always said for the past multitude of years that I think 6 is the perfect number in North Carolina based off the population. So I like 6. I'm not going to complain about 7. My thing is if we're going to cap it at 64, I hope that they at least have 32-team playoff brackets. I don't want a scenario where every team goes. We don't need a bunch of participation trophies. I'd rather still see 32 teams make the playoffs in each. So 16 East, 16 West. I'm fine with that. But, the state's growing. We've been using this same antiquated system since 1913. So, yes, let's do something different. Let's shake it up, try to make it a little bit more fair because, we've already determined that the state's growing in different ways. It's more centrally located. You don't have a lot of people in the East and the West like you used to. It's such more tightly confined. So let's do something different, try to make it fair. If we go to the regional base rank conferences or whatever, I'm fine with that. Hey, again, we've been doing the same antiquated thing now for about 108 years. Let's do something different.
I'm all for something different. I'm also would like to see the state championship game come to Panther Stadium.
Amen to that.
That press conference in Charlotte maybe is the forerunner to that. Alex, I'm curious what you have to think, but we got to put you on a timer, my man. Go ahead.
I just want to echo what Chris said and what Cam said. 7 is too many. 5 might be the way to go. Because what we have to consider is we're talking football here, but this has to span all sports in many, many ways. So that being said, and we're talking about size differentials, and that is an issue, no question about that. But then you start getting into situations with other sports which you have fewer and fewer schools. Once you get past football, basketball, baseball, you start getting into situations where you have fewer and fewer schools playing certain sports, which makes it a formidable challenge to fill brackets. Then the other thing you have to consider is we had options in the past subdividing. Now, I'm not looking to go to 12 champ. I mean, we had 8. That was crazy. We all know that. But we also have the option on a table to look at maybe like South Carolina does, where they have just the largest classification with the small and the big. Or you remember we had when subdividing began, only the 1A classification was subdivided. So we've got some options there, cognizant of the fact that this has to go across all sports. The other thing that I want to mention, Chris just put this in the chat, is we have the opportunity to talk 8-man football on the table. So all of those things, 7 too many, 5, we can look at that. But let's just keep in mind, this has to work for all sports.
Are we going to do it? Are we basing it off just numbers, or are they going to do it based upon the 3 factors I think they did before?
That I have not heard, Sam. That'd be interesting to see how they do that, because it can get very convoluted if they do it.
Let me say this of what Alex just said. He said about all sports, but let's be honest. The sports that they're looking at is football and basketball, because those are the ones that bring in the dollars, and anything else has to be secondary because they don't bring in any money.
Gary, you're right.
But they aren't going to split. They aren't going to split other. Or let me restate that. They're going to create conferences, and they're going to want those conferences to carry through for every sport throughout the whole thing. On the 7 versus 5, this is something, and Chris has done a lot of this. I've done a lot of this. We played numbers games for 20 years, and if you go to 5, we're probably going to have too many split conferences. And what we have to do is try to eliminate split conferences. 6, like Chris says, seems to be a good sweet number. But I think what they need to focus on is to try to do something to lessen the split conferences. And if that means doing what was mentioned, but that Alex mentioned, maybe is some of the classifications just play straight up, and maybe some of the classifications could split when it comes to the playoffs. But I think we got to be cognizant of not creating too many split conferences.
No,
I'm not, and I do want to say one thing on the participation thing. If the first round is an entry into the playoffs, as long as we're not playing extra games in the season, I'm not too much against it. We saw it this year, and it wasn't too bad.
Just real quick to follow up on Gary's point. Gary's absolutely right. We know that football and basketball do drive the ship. There's no question about that. But you just have to keep in mind, you still got to put your tennis team and your soccer team on the road to wherever these conference games are played. So even though football and basketball are driving the ship, all of them have to go on the road, and that's going to create gas bills and other things. So
Cam knows all about that, being a Charlotte 49ers fan. That's in those tennis teams all the way to Houston every year. He knows all about that.
And loss of sleep on nights and all
that. That guy that was talking, Gary Richmond, I was trying to put his nameplate up, but as usual, Gary's so low on the screen, I can't put his nameplate up. We tell him every week. Don't we tell him every week, guys? There he is. There he is.
Check it out. So, we got some cool things on the show that you will not get anywhere else. We have Alex's iron. and now we got Gary's literally green screen.
Well, I don't know what's going on with the camera.
My camera.
Like this.
At least my camera's working. Langston, that ain't happening.
That is true.
Touche. All right, let's find out who Grice and Griner picked as the players of the week. And when we get back, the Guru's driving the bus.
This is the last G&G edition of Grice's Gems, man. We're so excited. Again, it's been a great year. We've got to get into this last edition of Grice's Gems. Let's go on out to Rocky Mount with Keno Jones. Again, the QB had 2 touchdowns, including a 7-yard game-winning pass to Ashton Rhodes with 58 seconds left in a 23-22 win over 71st in the NCHSAA regional final. Northern Nash is going to the state finals for the first time in 20 years. So, Griner, we had to bring this QB on. Talk about what you see here, Griner.
Well, I mean, just the thing about these Grice's Gems, just, him as well, starting off, is they made big-time plays down the stretch, strapped the team on their back and made these big plays. And it's great to see because they haven't been in the state finals in 20 years. I mean, they took down 71st, who probably were the favorites in this game, and the quarterback had to play a great game, and he did. Playing on both sides of the ball as well, doing everything he could to lead his team.
Definitely. No, we're excited to have Keno on there. Big-time win by Northern Nash. We know Rocky Mount is literally rocking. Let's go out to Beulahville, North Carolina with Cade Kennedy from East Duplin. Hey, Grant, is one of your nominees for an Ice Bath All-Star here. Had a 79-yard scoring run in Friday's 28-26 win over Wallace Rose Hill. I mean, he's leaving dudes. And on defense, Cade Kennedy brought the lumber, as he does consistently from week to week, with 12 tackles. Talk about this Ice Bath All-Star, and again, the type of guy he looks like he is. He looks like a guy who can play for you, Grant.
Yeah, he's a downhill guy. Come at you now. Go through people, not around. You got to love the way he plays. Look at that place, how it was jumping. I mean, look at the environment, like wrapped around the horseshoe, the whole deal. This guy was feeling it all game long. You could tell he's passionate, the way he played. Definitely performed on both sides of the ball, and then he hit the ice bucket, no doubt.
Oh, he's got a Luke Kuechly-esque just, seeking the ball. I mean, he just literally, has a nose for the ball. And I know we're using all those cliches, but it just seems like, no matter where he is, he gets hidden behind offensive linemen. Then he pops out and finds the ball and makes the tackle. So,
yeah, you could tell this kid he's played football for a long time. He's played in Pop Warner, different things. Like, he has an act for the game that can't be taught sometimes. It's got to be a feel, and he has that. The game is just easy to him.
I love it, Griner. Let's go forward out to Mount Airy. Again, big-time win there. We got Tyler Mason, scored 5 touchdowns in Friday's big 35-6 win over Drawn. Mason ran 18 times for 292 yards. Also had an interception on defense. I mean, this is one of those, as my friend calls it, Chris Johnson touchdowns, Griner. Ain't nobody in the screen. There's no one in the screen when he scores a touchdown.
Now, this is a true Grice's Gym worthy deal. 5 touchdowns, almost 300 yards. A lot of guys made big impact plays because of tight games, but they literally put it on Drawn and whooped their tail. And this guy was the big part of it. I mean, he literally just dominated the game.
Look at that. 20 yards of space between where he scores, man. They're playing
just gone.
Scores. again, big time win there. Tyler Mason, glad to have him. Let's go forward to Reedsville, the 336 to Lorenzo Mendoza. Again, we talked about this in our lead up to this game. Reedsville had been successful intercepting quarterbacks. They did it with Wesley Thompson at Maiden before. We knew Ben Mooney coming in last week's Grice's Gym. Knew him coming in, was going to be tough there. But Lorenzo Mendoza intercepted quarterback Ben Mooney twice in Friday's big 32-14 win. Mooney had thrown 5 interceptions all game before Friday. Friday night, he threw 3, unfortunately for him. Big ups to Lorenzo and Reedsville. They go to the state finals again for the 6th time in 7 years. And, hey, we talked about it in our lead up, and, again, we reiterated here. Reedsville has 33 interceptions as a team. Lorenzo,
that's amazing.
That grinder.
Yeah, that's big time. When you're able to do that, that was a huge matchup problem for Burns. The style that they were playing this year, throwing the ball around, they just ran into the buzzsaw in Reedsville with 33 interceptions. And Lorenzo to be able to lead that team and be able to get those picks in this game, 2 of them, that's big time.
Definitely. Well, now we've got to get to the last call of 2022, Grinder. We got to get to the last one, and the guy with that honor is Ben Cutter out of East Lincoln. Let's talk about what Ben had going on. Again, the West Virginia recruit made an interception near his team's goal line in the final seconds to lift his team to a 14-7 win over South Point. And East Lincoln is going to its first state championship in 8 years. I've got a buddy that went to East Lincoln, and he hit me up all excited, like, we're going back, baby. So, Ben, I got to talk about this. Again, we know you're a big-time player, and you've made big plays all year. But, again, to make an interception against South Point, let's talk about that, Grinder. We know South Point is run the ball. But for them to actually throw it and you have the wherewithal to make that play, talk about that and just your mentality in those final plays.
Yeah, going into the game, if you told me I would have had an interception, I wouldn't have believed you. But,
the two reasons because they don't throw the ball a whole lot, and you're playing with the line,
Yeah. But walk us through that play, Ben. Yeah.
Yeah, just that last drive was, very stressful. They started out, I don't know how much time they had left. I think like 45 seconds left on their own, 30-yard line. Threw a bomb and completed it. One of our guys slipped. The field was kind of wet, so he slipped and was open, but we were able to catch up to him. And they had another first down. That brought them down to about 7 seconds left on that last play. And I was supposed to have quarterback contain on that play, but I knew that if he ran it, he wouldn't get there in time to get a first down before the 7 seconds went out. But he definitely wasn't making it to the end zone because we had a lot of guys over there. So I kind of just dropped back. He broke the pocket, so I ran with him a little bit, read his eyes, and then I was just in the right place to make that play.
Yeah, the analytical approach this guy takes is just amazing. He's like, you could tell he breathes football. I knew, game situation, East Lincoln knows what they're doing. This guy right here, you could tell why he's being recruited by the high-level Division I programs, just because of the way he's talking. I knew with 7 seconds left, he was not going to get a first down. I dropped back and I shadowed him, and I made the daggone athletic move play. This guy.
I love it, Ben. And again, you guys hadn't had a hard schedule this year, but you were beating the heck out of everybody you played. But, you really got to the nitty-gritty of your schedule and showed it doesn't matter who's in front of us. We're beating the heck out of you, too. Yeah. You guys are going to state and haven't been, like I said, in 8 years. I've got, a buddy texting me like he's excited because he's an East Lincoln grad. Did you go back then and just talk about the community support rallying around you guys after the big time win?
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. Just the amount of people that were at that game was insane. I've never seen that many people all 4 years I've been there at a high school, football game. I think we had more people there than the Kings Mountain game. I'm not sure though. But it's a great feeling when you make a play, you hear the crowd go crazy. So it helps you stay motivated the whole game.
Going to play at home was a great advantage. Going to play on the road with Kings Mountain versus the number 1 seed, taking down that foe who was like heavily favorites going into the game, and you guys put a whooping on them. Getting to come back home playing against a South Point team that's very, very tough and difficult to go with because you don't see it throughout the year, and they're downhill at your throat. Tell me a little bit about being at home. That it felt good playing at home for this game for sure.
Yeah, it's a good environment. Definitely a good advantage against them being at home. Kind of know how the field feels. Our field is kind of like it kind of comes to a point in the middle and kind of goes down. So a lot of teams aren't used to that. Our field our cut's kind of messed up, but yeah, it would definitely give us an advantage.
He doesn't know. Hey, that's, you can tell he's young. That's a crown on the field. We all grew up with that, where you had the middle of the field is the highest point, and the rain always kind of, so it doesn't collect in the middle of the field, so it goes down to the sides. Like we're used to that, but these young kids aren't. But no, Ben, again, we're definitely excited for you. Talk about going into the state. You're playing Northern Nash. We talked about it here on our segment. Just a big time win for them to make it here. Have you had that early look at them yet? And kind of what are your thoughts going into the state?
Yeah, I've watched a little bit of film. I don't think that, when they go empty, we can't sell out to the pass. They like to run the quarterback when they go empty. And I think it just comes to, doing the easy things, doing the things we've been doing all year, stopping the run, make them pass the ball. When they do pass the ball, we can't let them break out of the pocket and get extra yards on 3rd and 8 and stuff like that. We got to put them away when we can.
I like it. Again,
man.
Yeah. Ron, you hear that? We might have to have him on doing the analysis, but
I know, Ron. I love it.
Way to ball again. Big time performances and big time games get you the call with us. Again, we could talk to you forever, but we got to wrap it up, unfortunately. But thank you for coming on, being our last call of 2022.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yep, no problem. We look forward to watching you in the state championship game. You ball like that, I might have to have a special segment with you.
All right.
Big Ben, we're doing it right.
Griner, man, I appreciate you coming on with me this year. I mean, that's been a big time 2022. Grice's Gyms. Again, we always do it where it's at Coach Jay Grice on Twitter, at Langston Wirtz, at Junior on Twitter, at Observer Preps. Thank everybody for their nominations this year. Thank people for really getting into this. It's been fun. You hate to be at the end of a season, of course, but we've made it there, Griner. So, Griner, thank you for everything you've done to help promote this and be great about this. And as for the one last time in 2022, Griner, you ball.
You're going to get the call. And I appreciate everything you do for kids, Grice. People don't know the work you put in and the stuff that you break down and watching film. You do a great job and a great service to all the youth of North Carolina. Appreciate you.
All right, man. Hey, I got to echo what Coach Griner said, Grice. A great job in everything you do to highlight all these young players and ballers out there. I see it every week, and I know the efforts you do in it because I've done it a lot with you. And thanks. I know all of us here. I want to tip our cap to you. Now, hey, we got the 2022 state championships heading up this weekend. I know that's the star of the show. That's what we really want to talk about. So let's go ahead and start with the 1A. There you see the 1A rankings. Really only 2 teams for us to really talk about. The rankings otherwise are the same, and that's the 2 teams that top the rankings. Tarboro right there against Mount Airy Friday or this Saturday in the 1A championship game. 2 teams, a little bit of a different style. Going to go head-to-head, and let's just kind of look at it right there. You see Mount Airy, the number 1 team, and somehow the other, I've lost my screen. Here we go. Mount Airy right there, 14-1. Tarboro, 13-1. Still feel like this is a little bit of a contrasting style. Tarboro has only thrown the ball 34 times all year. Write that down again. 34 times, only completing about 30 yards a game average on offense. But we've talked about the underclassmen that are just really carrying the mail for Coach Jeff Craddock and that Viking team that, yes, by the way, is a perennial favorite year in, year out. They've won just dozens of championships over the years. Tarboro, led by sophomore Mason Satterfield. He's got over 1,000 yards. Tarboro's got almost 4,000 yards rushing. Freshman Cameron McDowell Moore has really come on strong in the playoffs, 1,400 yards, 21 touchdowns. But they're going to need every point and then some against Coach J.K. Atkins and that Mount Airy team that just seems to be rolling. We just seen it with Coach Grice's Gyms. You got Tyler Mason's got 2,000-plus yards rushing, 46 touchdowns. Ian Gallimore at quarterback that really seems to steer that ship. And just kind of looking at these, these 2 teams met, just a little bit of a history lesson. Alex, and I'll throw it to you. These 2 teams met in the state championship game back in 2017, and I think Tarboro won that game big. But I feel, and I know I'm one of the only ones on this panel, I think it could be the other way around. I think Mount Airy may be the more talented team. I think the team speed may be very similar. I don't know. I want to throw it to you, Alex. What do we see?
What we see is we're hearkening back to the days of the 1990s glory days run of Gary's former favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys. If you remember when the Cowboys won those back-to-back Super Bowls in the 90s, that the reaction was they're good and they're young. And that's what we're seeing with this Tarboro team right here. 12 seniors on this rock. Oh my gosh. This is a statement opportunity for Tarboro. Not the Tarboro's won championships. We all know that. But it's a unique statement in terms of how young its primary skill position producers are. And a win in this game right here, buoyed by Satterfield and McDowell Moore, will make a statement akin to what the Dallas Cowboys of the 1990s did when they won those back-to-back Super Bowls and they were super young. So this is a unique statement opportunity for Tarboro.
Coach Grice.
Yeah, I think in those 1A game, I harken back last year to Mitchell versus Tarboro, and I think the thing that's going to stand out in this game in the first quarter is just the team speed. We talked a lot about Todd Turbyfield last year, the quarterback for Mitchell, the do-it-all guy. Mitchell had a fantastic year, but when they came against Tarboro, that team speed was overwhelming for them and ultimately led to them losing the game. And I think with Mount Airy, we talked about, again, Tyler Mason and just the great performance they had, really shutting down Drawn in the regional final. Can they match up with that team speed of Tarboro? And I think that's going to be the key for me as they start this game. And really, like Alex alluded to, this Tarboro team, again, isn't necessarily the team. They've had better teams there, but I think the part about this that he's reiterated so poignantly and so well is that they're young. And if they can take care of business now when they're young, look out as they are going forward. But I like this Mount Airy team, and I think they're going to hang tough, but that team speed is going to be the key.
Yeah. One thing I look at is, I look at the blueprint that maybe Coach Trent Lohman and East Surrey, another team from Surrey County, just down the road, rivals of Mount Airy, put forth when, they had Jonathan Boaz a couple years ago, and with their passing game was really able to neutralize and just exploit Tarboro and just blew them out. And, I have to wonder if we're going to see another episode of that this coming weekend. But Sam, I wanted to throw it to you. Ian Gallimore, the quarterback from Mount Airy, I feel like he is your kind of football player. Not only is he the quarterback, he's got 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, but he also leads the team in tackles with 110, 24 for a loss. This is just a hardcore football player that I thought really fit the mold of a guy you'd like.
Yeah, anytime you get the ice bucket guy, you got to love him. It's someone that when these college coaches are coming around this time of year, you're highlighting them and you're basically saying, look, this is the type of guy you want to build your football program around. If he's playing linebacker, if he's playing quarterback, if he's, he's on any special teams, he's a guy that just loves football, and you appreciate that. And these type of guys don't come around very often. I was fortunate to coach one of them, and that's probably why we won a state championship. And, Brahim Murphy, he was playing quarterback, playing inside linebacker on third down, things of that nature. But just they have an act to lead, and you definitely have that in that kid in Mount Airy. But like you said, to beat a man, you got to beat the man, and Tarboro is being that man. And they're going to be playing that theme music, and Ric Flair is going to be like, he's going to have a hard time keeping these Gators down. So, we'll see.
Hey, I got to throw it out there. I got to correct myself. It was Jefferson Boaz, the former East Surrey quarterback, now backup quarterback at University of North Carolina. So, hey, anybody else? We're going to close the book on 1A. It's going to be a big-time game this coming Saturday. I anxiously await it. I know that I may be one of the few that decided to pick Mount Airy. So we'll see. Is the guru right? Is the guru wrong? We'll find out. But, hey, let's fast forward and look at the 2A championships. There you see right there, again, only 2 teams really matter. Reedsville jumping up there to the number 1 team in the state. I saw them in person Friday night. Everything Alex said about them is just 100% correct. Al Lee, Kendra Harrison, that team right there, they just absolutely dismantled a phenomenal Burns team, and I just watched it there with my own eyes. I came away thinking, man, this Reedsville team may be one of the better teams I've seen, and they are also so young. Let's take a look at the measurables for this game. There you see it, Reedsville 14-1. The Rams have won more state championships. They've got 19 than any other team in the state of North Carolina, including 4 in the last 6 years. Coach Jimmy Teague has done a great job. Of exceptionally talented team. There you look there at the bottom. Al Lee's throwing for 2,100 yards. They've got receivers all over the ball. Their scheme is phenomenal. It's almost like they do not put you in a position to succeed as a defense because they're so good at exploiting what you're trying to do. You shift into different positions, they run the ball. You back up, they're going to run the ball. You come up, they're going to throw the ball. They're really good. Coach Jimmy Teague's won almost 400 games. You don't do that by accident. And let's take a look at East Duplin. This has been a team on the mission. I definitely think this is the number one team in Eastern North Carolina. 2 huge wins over rival Wallace Rose Hill. We saw that cardiac game Friday night where they won that game 28-26, coming in 14-1. They've won 4. They've lost. Let's look at it. East Duplin has won or lost 5 games this season by a touchdown or less. So that tells us they've played some tough teams. But I really like these guys on that team. We talked about them all year long. Zach Brown, Avery Gabby, Cade Kennedy, a lot of great guys. And then, I got to tip the cap to Coach Battle Holly. Again, he's the son of royalty, Coach Jack Holly. Alex, I'm going to throw it again to you here in the 2A. What do we see in this epic matchup?
This is everything that we want to see for everything that Chris just said. The football history and heritage in this game is this right here might be the best game in terms of a matchup, how the teams match up against each other. This could be the best game. So that being said, once again, just sit back and enjoy it. The same thing we said last week about East Duplin and Wallace Rose Hill, and we saw how that one ended. So just sit back and enjoy this and appreciate the history, heritage, legacies oozing on the field all game long in this one. Enjoy the game.
All right, Grice, Griner, who wants to jump in here and look at this thing from the Western perspective? What do we see?
Yeah, I love Alex. Alex is my guy. I don't see it. I think East Duplin hasn't seen the talent that's you talked about oozing. Reedsville's got a lot of talent oozing. We talk about Al Lee, just the consummate distributor, quarterback that doesn't make a lot of mistakes. We talk about Flip. We talk about talk about some of the great things he's done. And Reedsville's shown at every point. I mean, we looked at Burns. We talked about their great aerial attack and the athletes they had and just how they were able to neutralize them. And just Reedsville's really answered the bell at every turn, every step that's been required. And I do think that East Duplin's their being one-dimensional is going to hurt them. I mean, I haven't seen a team really line up and just run the ball down Reedsville's throat. And I think that's what they're going to have to do to be successful in this game. And to flip it, I mean, and I talked about this even before. I mean, East Duplin, their only loss is to Princeton. And who do we have? We talked about Christian Paris, one of the best running backs in the eastern part of the state, where you're going to have similar type athletes in that up and down the field for Reedsville. And I think that speed might be the undoing for East Duplin. And I'm fine if they loot this or take care of this. But that team speed in this game, to me, I think is going to be the part that they're going to have to step up and really battle against. Everybody's talking about, dealing with teams that run the ball and do all of that. Well, Al Lee can get that ball in the air to his guys at a moment's notice. And I think he's going to do that. And East Duplin's going to need to be on guard to make sure this game doesn't get away from him.
Yeah. And being on the sideline of that game against Burns Friday night, I came away fully believing that Reedsville, they're the number one team in 2A, but I think that if they were in the 4A, they would definitely be a bona fide top 10, 12, 15 kind of team. Obviously, we've seen how strong they played against a really good Page team. I think Reedsville, like you said, Grice, they are just so talented, so well coached. I mean, Jimmy Teague is a bona fide Hall of Famer, one of the best there's been. Anybody else want to jump in here on this 2A game?
Just like I said, Reedsville, I watched a little bit of the film from the Burns because I thought Burns, aerial attack was just a little different this year and wanted to see how they defended it. And to get all the interceptions that they did in that game just shows their athleticism to be able to match almost any team. And they got the experience. Their head coach, has been there, done that. Like you said, they got, 19 championships? That's a lot of championships. And this coach has 333 victories, like it says right there. It's not nothing he hasn't seen before. And, East Duplin's got a tall task here.
Yeah. And I hope that I'm not giving Coach Battle Holly and everybody at East a lot of bulletin board material. I want this game to be played on the field, but I would be surprised. I just don't see this necessarily being a competitive game late in the game. I may be wrong. I have been in the past, but I just think that Reedsville is that good. But anyway, man, let's go ahead and move our focus to the 3A. Let's take a look at the 3A rankings. Again, two teams that matter. Northern Nash, number 1 team. East Lincoln right there, number 2. That was a hard. I really kind of wanted to put East number 1. Northern Nash, they have been up there all year long, and they've been in that top 2 or 3 year after year, or week after week, I should say. But taking a look, we still see season-ending rankings. There you see your West Charlotte Lions, Sam, holding strong right there. Again, I got to tip your cap to them. But before I go in and break down the games coming up this Saturday, I want to look at the video that our man Cam put together at the media day here this past Monday, talking to both coaches, Northern Nash coach Andrew Ferris and David Lubowitz of East Lincoln. So let's roll that video.
It's been an honor to be the number 1 seed. The run has been fun and stressful at the same time. I mean, it's just been really, really fun to be able to continue that on. I've told the kids I don't think they quite understand, because we just kept going, and they kind of don't realize that everybody else is not. And so I don't even know if it's really sunk into them yet, what we've been able to do.
And what challenges does this East Lincoln team present you guys?
Well, first of all, their defense is amazing. They're incredible. They jump off the film. I mean, you really worry, is there any way we can move the ball at all? Because they've just given up very, very few points. So they're really, really good. And then their offense, very, very capable weapons. I mean, they just have our weapons all over the field. So it's going to be a real challenge to do that. The biggest thing, obviously, I think the first thing you look at is just their defense. And, is there any way we can eke something out? And if we can just get some drives going and, hope for something to break our way in the scoring capacity, I think that's kind of what our approach will be.
Yeah, it's really the senior leadership, all that stuff. They're a crazy group of kids, man. They got a lot of confidence. They play with a lot of swagger. But that Kings Mountain game, we had to fill out a little form ahead of time about what was the changing moment in our season. I think that Kings Mountain game was the first time we were not favored to win, and it really didn't seem to affect our kids. So their ability to kind of overcome different types of offenses, different types of defenses, and then also different types of situations where, you are favored or you aren't favored. I mean, we were favored by 50-some points against some teams. They went into it kind of business-like, did what they had to do. We were supposed to lose to Kings Mountain. They went into it business-like, did what they had to do with a lot of excitement.
Hey, great video, Cam. And by the way, I saw my man Mike Solarte. I saw Riley Fields. Looked like Nate Wimbley there in the background. I saw a lot of our buddies back there. It's a great video. And a good conversation with both of them. I think both of these coaches have just done a terrific job. I have been high on Northern Nash all year. They've really been on a good 3-year run that I've seen that team just get better and better and better ever since Coach Andrew Ferris took over. 15-0 coming into that game. They only played in a state championship game back in 2002 against AC Reynolds. So this is new territory here in recent history for the Knights. Look at it. Keno Jones is a very good passer, completing 64% of his passes, 2,500 yards, 37 touchdowns. Also is a running threat with 750 yards. And then looking at East Lincoln. And by the way, I'm not trying to give any bulletin board material. I want to let the game play out. But, man, I really dug into that East Lincoln team this weekend. And, boy, they are good. The Knights are going to have their hands full come Saturday. Look at that East Lincoln team. They haven't allowed more than 8 points a game only twice this year. Ben Cutter, we saw him leads the team with 175 tackles. I mean, I just look at them and I'm like, wow. And, I talked to Coach Greg Lloyd at Kings Mountain, and he was just – He was complimentary about the size and the length and the speed and athleticism all across the field for that East team. Gentlemen, I want to throw it out to you because I feel like you men are the experts. But I think this has a chance to be a real Donnybrook of a game, and I'm anxious to see it. Who wants to get it? Dale?
Yeah, I'll say a few things. I think this may be the more competitive game. I have only seen Northern Nash on film. I was just extremely impressed with East Lincoln, having seen a bunch of teams this year, a bunch of defenses. The comment was made about teams being able to play up or where they may fit in the overall in the state. This team right here is a team that definitely is a top 10 team in the state, and maybe even higher. what the defense is what I see being their strong point, and by that I mean their ability to adapt, be it a pass game or be it a run game, and to be able to hold that run game of South Point's the way that they did, and actually to hold that South Point offense down like they did. I think this is going to be a fun game.
Grice, what do you see?
You say Alex?
No, Grice, you're up, man.
I didn't hear you. Yeah. No, I laughed. I literally was kind of talking about it in the chat where, like, people, weren't really looking at East Lincoln from a standpoint of just we knew that they hadn't played a lot of top competition. But boy, they when they got the opportunity, they really impressed. And I think the biggest part of watching them against the top competition and everyone they faced, one was their size. I mean, they looked like they could be playing football or basketball and they'd be a top 10 team just with some of the size of their kids. And two, just the physicality. I think that, to me, really jumped off the screen offensively when you looked at the offensive linemen, as far as and Grant even alluded to it against Kings Mountain, just how they got off the ball, how those guys were just active, violent, and aggressive, and then even defensively, they were relentless in their pursuit of the ball carry on every single play. It looked like it was a state championship was on the line on every single play, and I think that's something that really stuck out to me there. I mean, Northern Nash, again, I watched some of that game, the regional final versus 71st, and I mean, you talk about that first half really being a defensive struggle. So, I mean, I think early on you're going to need to be cautious. I mean, you got two really tough defenses that we're going to see, but just that athleticism of East Lincoln, can Northern Nash really play with that? But I think defensively Northern Nash is going to bring it, and I think you're going to, if this were a situation where you were looking for a lot of points, you might want to turn on another game.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Sam, I'll throw it to you. Yeah. South Point put 74, I believe, on Dudley. We know how good Dudley was. We know how good that offense was at South Point. East Lincoln, and Dale was at that game, just went in there. Ben Cutter was amazing. They just dominated one of the most prolific rushing offenses in the state of North Carolina and just made them look defenseless. How do you see this from a defensive battle? And if you are the head coach of Northern Nash, I always like to ask you these questions from a coaching perspective because you really break down the film better than anyone I know. What would scare you about trying to come up with a game plan against this East team?
Well, the East Lincoln team, both of these teams are extremely well coached. I mean, obviously, if they're making it this far, they're well coached, but they're detailed out. They might have, let me say this, say a team has 7 different run concepts that they like. They can break down this other team and focus on the 2 or 3 that they think will work well on a Northern Nash team and vice versa. And that's going to be the chess in this game, is that both of these defenses are why they are here. The offenses are going to be who executes the best. And a lot of this comes down to where the field conditions can be. And so I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think there'll be some field goals involved in this one. But I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a 14-10 type game in this championship just because of the stud of the defenses both teams have.
Cam, what do you think?
I mean, I think it's two very good teams defensively, like Sam mentioned. East Lincoln, to beat a team like Kings Mountain, that's no easy feat. And to do it the way they did was even more impressive. I mean, their defense just got all over Kings Mountain. I mean, I think Kings Mountain was a little wore out because of the way Sam's team got to him the week prior. But nonetheless, East Lincoln, I think, would be the favorite in this game. But it'll be interesting to see how Northern Nash can, attack their defense in different areas.
Yeah, I mean, East Lincoln is a very sound offense, though, too. I mean, Northern Nash as well. But, East Lincoln is huge, like as Gray said. So their first initial contact is going to be the part of the game. I think they'll be able to create a surge, and they'll be able to possess the ball a little bit longer than Northern Nash and eventually wear down the defense. And I think that will be the deciding factor. So if you had to put me to the score, I would say East Lincoln by 7 points, if I had to say.
If I'm the coaching staff at East Lincoln, I'm going to be trying to get my hands on that film from Rocky Mount. Coach Jason Battle and Rocky Mount really took it to Northern Nash and was probably the toughest game before this playoff battle against 71st. And I'd be trying to see what Jason Battle and his team was able to do. Alex, I know that you really scour the East just as well as anybody. What do you say? I'm kind of saving it here for you to kind of talk us through this Eastern perspective.
Absolutely. Northern Nash. So anytime you come out of that conference in which they compete, you look at, I mean, Rocky Mount and Southern Nash have been on either in the mix or on the cusp of championships in the last 5 to 10 years multiple times. You come out of that conference 15-0, you're going to have an opportunity. This is Northern Nash. This is an example of tradition reinvigorated. We talk about the 20-year span between state championship game appearances right here for Northern Nash. The community of Red Oak, right on the outskirts of Rocky Mount, is very, very excited by this possibility. Eastern North Carolina football is evolving. And just note how we see what Tarboro does one county over, but then you see the balance of a Northern Nash, as we see explained on the screen right here, which puts them in a position to have an opportunity on this stage. The balance that we need to see in our larger classifications is bearing itself out in the evolution of Eastern North Carolina football. I think we're seeing that same kind of infusion in Eastern North Carolina football, like we talk about 336 and 704 tendencies overlapping with each other. We're seeing some of that infusion in Eastern North Carolina football. Once again, all credit to our good friend, Mr. 336 made, 704 paid. So we're seeing that play out in Eastern North Carolina football, and that gives Northern Nash an opportunity here.
Well, the one thing I'll close the book on this 3A discussion, last year when I was going through the finalists for what I thought to be the absolute coach of the year in the state of North Carolina, I thought that Andrew Ferris was in my final 2 or 3. Again, to understand, and Alex could validate this, but to understand where that Northern Nash program was 2 or 3 years ago before he took over, and where he has quickly gotten this program to. And they haven't had an influx of talent come in. They've always been a talented team, but to see what he's been able to do from a leadership and just guiding that team through, I think that is just phenomenal. Coach Ferris came from those powerhouse programs of Wilson Hunt in the early 2000s, kind of come up under the tutelage of Randy Raper. I got to tip my cap to him and what he's been able to do. I may be good friends with him, but I've also seen him really build this program the right way. And I just want to say I hope that it's a great game, a healthy game, and that both of these teams come away happy. And anyway, we'll see. But, hey, we got one more classification. I think this is the one a lot of you guys are anxious to talk about. We got the big championship game coming up Friday night in between New Bern and Greensboro Grimsley. Let's take a look at the rankings now in the 4A. And I'm really anxious to get to this video as well. I'm guessing Langston's going to flash them up there. Maybe not. But anyway, it don't matter. We got one team that's standing tall atop the top of the rankings. Grimsley, coming in undefeated. We've seen what they were able to do against a really strong Weddington team Friday night. Special teams came up huge late in that game to win that game over Weddington. And then, of course, New Bern just blowing out Millbrook. There you see that 4A Fight Club is like Grice likes to talk about.
Club.
Yeah, it is dominant. You see a who's who list of teams that really rose to the top this year. But before we break into the state championship game, which I think is really good, again, our good friend Cam, you put together a great video. You got some great coaching questions for Coach Tori Noel at New Bern. And I hear he's got a really good comment that I'm anxious to see. And then Daryl Brown, obviously, at Grimsley. So, hey, let's just go ahead and throw it to it, Langston. Roll that footage.
We're blessed, man. And like you said, man, that's what you want to see. You want to see two of the best teams in the state competing, play against each other. You wouldn't have it any other way. We're definitely thankful and blessed that we have this opportunity that we have in front of ourselves. They're a great team. They have some big-time players on their team. I think one of the issues we have is that we're in the East in the 252. And we're the only 4A team besides D.H. Conley that's in the 252. But, we played Maury in Virginia, and they compete for state championships every year. And, people never talk about it because we really don't get points for those guys in the playoffs. So the big thing for us is, man, we just kind of want to do what we do and just constantly do it better, and just improve each week and just try to become the best team that we can possibly become.
Playoffs, you
But
face some
my
really
question
tough.
is always who to say we didn't play tougher opponents. We beat New Hanover 43 to something, and they beat Butler, and Butler's one of the big time programs in the state. So, I mean, I think in the East, a lot of times people say that we don't play tougher opponents just because we're not a Charlotte Mecklenburg team, but I think the teams in Virginia that we play are pretty good, and I think my county's pretty good. Craven County has great football. Havelock's always going to dominate the East in 3A. West Craven's always going to dominate the East in 2A. So for us, what we say all the time is every game we play is a big time game because it's New Bern. Craven County's a football county, and we expect to win.
So we spent all weekend preparing for them. Really, really good football team, well coached, very good at what they do. Something completely different than what we've seen all year as far as how they line up, what they're running with the triple option and stuff. Defensively, very athletic, long, get after you, good up front with some really good players. Huge challenge. And we've seen a lot of different schemes and stuff throughout the playoffs. Different teams each and every week that do different stuff, and no different this week. So it's going to take a great week of preparation for our team, from our team.
How has this road through the playoffs prepared you for the ultimate prize?
I think as much as anything, it gave our kids confidence, in what we've been telling them, and the fact that we're never out of a game, and they believe in one another. They believe in what our coaches have preached to them and taught them. And I think as much as anything, these last few weeks have just gave them the faith and confidence in one another. And we'll need that on Friday night again, because it's going to be a huge challenge. And, you're going to face different adversity throughout the game like we have the last few weeks, and just got to find a way to overcome it.
All right, Cam. Hey, great job. And Tori Noel, by the way, he is not lying. He is absolutely right. I've been saying that they went up and played Maury in Norfolk, Virginia, and they played the best that they could play in Eastern North Carolina. But Coach is not wrong about what he is stating, that New Bern gets slighted because they are in the East. I don't doubt that at all. But they've gotten there. They've lined up against every team, and they've beaten them all, and they've beaten just about every team pretty bad. So hats off to what he and that entire staff done there at New Bern. The Bears coming into this game 15-0. They've already won three state championships in their days. I know a lot of us. I remember Dale, you and I were together. That 07 game when they ended the independent streak up there at Wake Forest BB&T Field back in 2007. So New Bern is no stranger to state championship games. They've won some big games over the years. New Bern's offense is almost entirely operated on the ground. The Bears have rushed for over 5,800 yards and have three players with 1,000 yards. That is a three-headed monster there in that backfield. And Grimsley's going to have all they can handle to stop it. Of course, we talked a lot about the Whirlies. Coach Darrell Brown has done a phenomenal job since he took over that program after doing a bang-up job at Southern Guilford. He's been around coaching this state now for about 15 years and has elevated his game to being one of the, the top spokesmen of the coaching fraternity in this state, and really just done a great job on the field. Already has a state championship under his belt. Grimsley survived some big-time Charlotte games. The narrow wins against Independence, against Huff, against Weddington. They've really run the gauntlet of that 4A Fight Club that I know we like to talk about. Quarterback Ryan Stevens leads the offense, thrown for almost 2,000 yards, rushed for another 1,000. I think this is going to be a phenomenal game. I can't wait for it. Bryce, I'm going to give it to you first. I know you're licking your chops about this game too.
Oh, this is what is it? I think it's Friday at 7. Or is this? Yeah. Oh, I'm clearing my schedule, getting some wings, pizza. Hey, this is the game of the weekend right here, without question. To compare this to my 704, folks. Honestly, I watched the New Bern Millbrook game. That's probably what I spent most of my time watching last weekend, as far as the regional finals. If you put some orange jerseys on that New Bern team, a lot of you would think that they resemble Chambers. Their aggressive defense, just the energy that they play with, that probably is the only comparison I could give to them. Again, offense, they look a lot different, but just athletes galore, but so well disciplined that, they really execute what they do to a T. I know a lot of people haven't seen them, but, they're a team that deserves to be here. It's warranted. Again, they beat, Millbrook and, Mr. Football finalist Mason Fortune last weekend. I'm excited for this. I think on both sides, the defensive line, you talk about KJ Sampson, a guy that was on our Mr. Football list most of the year. That's a sack machine. I think it's Will Brimmer's the other defensive lineman on that, on that line. That's going to be crazy. We've talked about Jamal Jarrett and, him spearheading that Grimsley defensive line. So the war in the trenches is going to be something that I'm really looking forward to in this game. I think for New Bern, they've really answered the bell. I mean, we talked about them being able to handle a passing attack with them being, really a run first team. They seem to do a good job of that. We've talked about them just maintaining against teams that they really should walk through and don't really get caught up. They did that. I mean, flip the same way to Grimsley. Everyone was looking at them, even, with their one seed of just, well, you got to beat Catholic and be disciplined there. They were able to do that. They were able to handle Huff and the big-time players on both sides of the ball there in 3 overtimes. Before that, Independence there. And then again, Weddington, the team that makes no mistakes. They were able to really outlast them. So both of these teams are worthy competitors, and I think this game is going to come down to the final minute. I'm excited. This is my game of the week without question.
Gary, you've been quiet all show. You're our 4A guy. I know you're a Charlotte guy, but you're also a coach, and, you've been in some big-time moments as a coach. I know that you would know what it would be like to prepare your team for a big game of this magnitude. Put your coaching hat on and your analyst hat and kind of give us your take on this game.
Well, Grice touched on it a little bit, but when I was listening to both coaches and looking at the overview, and I saw the Grimsley game a little bit last week, and I thought about some of the teams that Grimsley has played on the way to the finals. What came to mind for me is scout teams. And what I mean by scout teams is how well does your scout team duplicate what your opponent does? Okay, because even though they can't do it at game speed, do they give the starters enough of a look that when they see it at game speed, they can adapt to it? And so I'm thinking about New Bern. You guys talk about how much they run the ball. They're a run-centric team. Well, can they duplicate what Grimsley does offensively as far as the passing game? And vice versa, can the Grimsley scout team duplicate what New Bern does as far as running the ball? It's hard to simulate physicality. You can talk about your plan when you're going up against teams that are physical, but like Mike Tyson used to say, everybody got a plan until they get hit in the mouth.
Yeah.
And then that plan just goes out the window. So I'm thinking scout teams this week, can they give their starters a good enough look so that when it hits game speed Friday night, that the starters aren't surprised and they can do what they practiced all week?
Sam, it ain't been that long ago since you were leading Harding to a state championship game and winning that. I remember broadcasting it from the TV booth. It was a big night for you for a lot of different reasons. But you've prepared for championships. You've went through that gauntlet of a 4A battle yourself, going up against a who's who list of teams. New Bern has had a little bit of an easier road in terms of just blowing some teams out in this playoff, whereas Grimsley has been well documented in just heart-stopping, heartbreaking games right to the end, tough game after tough game after tough game. You being a coach, you haven't been there before. Which position would you rather be in? The position, in New Bern where they've kind of blown some teams out and kind of cruised a little bit more into the playoffs? Or do you think that there's an advantage to a Grimsley team who has had to be on their A+++ game week after week after week and have found different ways to win games late in the game?
You mean, obviously you would want to be on the Grimsley side of this to be battle tested as long as you were healthy. Now, if you were the Grimsley team and you were wounded, you were coming into this game, you had some starters that were banged up, the guys you were relying on, then obviously you'd want to be on the New Bern side of that. I'm very curious. Does anyone know New Bern's offense? Is it called by the head coach? Is that his style, or is his offense coordinator run that and he's more of the game manager? Does anybody know that? Because that's one thing I don't know.
I don't remember it from 2 years ago in the spring, Steve. I don't remember who was calling for sure.
Okay,
I'm not sure
I got
on
you
that
because
one
I mean
either.
it's a very
I don't
unique.
have that answer for you.
Well, I mean, it's a very unique style to prepare for. Something you don't see a whole lot of, and they're very good at it. I mean, like you said, they got guys with 1,000 yards rushing all over the place, and then when they do throw the ball, they're gonna, go over the top. It's hard to mock that in practice. Now, Grimsley's done a great job going against Catholic and all these other different teams. So I think Grimsley is mostly the well-rounded team, and they would be the favorite coming into this game. But New Bern's got a little bit of a chip on their shoulders, you could tell in the interview that Cam did, rubbed them the wrong way a little bit. And he's like, they're practicing right now. The lights are on. They're not even watching this. They're practicing right now. So it could be a factor in this game.
So one of the things that can be a factor is the New Bern's offense is going to consume a lot of time. And of course, I said this a few weeks ago, but do you get frustrated? And do you feel like you got to strike back quickly if New Bern's able to put together the drives that not only consume a lot of time, but do put points on the board? And I think that's going to be an important thing in this game is teams have got to come off the field getting their points, which means kicking field goals at times. I don't believe it's going to be a race up and down, score. I think it's going to be a lot of field position and defense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Cam, you've seen Grimsley here in the playoffs, so you're familiar with them. And I know you've got a pretty keen eye for the football on the field as well. Give us your professional opinion. How do you see this game playing out? And just what is your take going into Friday night's championship game?
And Grimsley has a stud of a running back in Mitchell Summers. That dude, he ran all over Huff's defense, which everybody knows how tough Huff's run defense is. Their defense as a whole, but their run defense especially. And so when you got a guy like that who can really create his own space, he doesn't necessarily have to have a big hole to run through. He can he's real shifty. And they got a good quarterback too. I like Grimsley's defense. I think there's some weak spots. Weddington beat them over the top sometimes. They do have Griffin Reimer, which Griffin Reimer is a D1 stud. So, but I like Grimsley in this game, but I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a very close game.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it's going to be a close game. Alex, I'm going to give you the final word here on the 4A. Again, you follow the East just as well as anyone in this state. What do you see in Friday night state championship game?
We're seeing on one side the culmination of a 3-year maturation process for New Bern. It's really neat to see when things like this happen. So we're seeing that come to fruition once again, just the tradition restored on that this is the 15th anniversary of that 2007 game that Chris spoke about earlier when New Bern stopped that independence streak. So we got tradition restored there. We have tradition that is being extended. As you remember, Grimsley didn't have an undefeated season in its history until 2 years ago in the spring season when it won a state championship. So good stuff there on both sides. I do think that the perspective that Coach Noel gave in terms of comparability from a scheduling perspective, and if you line up, just consider it holistically within a Craven County perspective, with an out-of-state perspective, that New Bern has earned its spot in this game right here. I do think that the Grimsley balance always creates a unique situation for a team that runs the ball like New Bern does. The key is going to be New Bern cannot get down by 2 scores in the first quarter.
Yes.
If they avoid that, they have as good a chance as anybody. If they get down 2 scores in the first quarter, that's going to be a problem. The other thing the other thing you want to keep an eye on, if Grimsley defensively is not what they were 2 years ago that spring, the way those guys were jumping off the ball on every snap against Cardinal Gibbons 2 years ago was unreal. They don't have that element this year to the same degree. So, once again, New Bern has every right to be in this game. It's staked its place in the game. New Bern just cannot get down by 2 scores in the first quarter.
Yeah. The only thing I want to predict, I think it's going to be a great game. I may lean very, very, very slightly to Grimsley, but you just never know. I think this was a 50-50 game, and it's really hard for me to pick. The only thing that I think for sure is when I walk in there and I see both those coaches, I'm standing on that 50-yard line Friday night before the game, and the coaches come and shake my hand. I have a feeling both of them are going to be giving me a hard time because, they're going to know that I'm the one that took both of them out of the rankings at one different time or the other. And I'm the one that's going to own that. And that's fine. They've done a great job of proving me wrong because, hey, the guru's not always right. So I'm going to own that. But they'll kind of give me some good faces. I think both of them are good men. I'm happy to call both of them a friend. But it's going to be a heck of a ball game on Friday night. Hey, gentlemen, your insight and expertise with this panel into this 4A game, and really all of them have been phenomenal. This has been a great year here on Talking Preps, and I'm happy to kind of put a wrap on it just in terms of the game conversation. But we got more of the show to do. In fact, we're going to roll it over to Fresh Faces right now because I know G&G really knocked it out of the park.
All right, Griner. Hey, we got a last edition, the 2022 finale of Fresh Faces. Like we say, from Murphy to Manio, from Dare to Cherokee, we are highlighting the best football players here. We're in the playoff edition of it, too. Just making sure, again, guys we may have even mentioned before, but I think this segment's great in the playoffs to highlight some of these big-time performers that you may not know about. But let's go to the 336. We got the man they call Flip, Keyshawn Flippin from Reedsville High School. He had a 102 interception yard return for a touchdown in Friday's semifinal win over Burns for the season. He's got 3 of them, Griner. He's got 3 pick sixes. So big-time player. I know on offense, he's also, I think, their leading receiver, if not one of their most explosive guys. And I think some of the highlights show how dynamic he is as a receiver here. Talk about the guy they call Flip, Griner.
Well, it's so cool to hear like a 102-yard interception return because, in high school, you can't return kickoffs if it hits the end zone punts and things of that nature. So it's so rare to hear one of these deals over a 102-yard return. Happens to be an interception, the only way it can get done. It's just really cool to talk about this on Fresh Faces.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you just see just how athletic this kid is, man. I mean,
yeah.
You see the flag, he doesn't care. He's celebrating regardless. But,
even your boy Money, a.k.a. Money that we had on last week, talked about, like, they look very athletic, but they hadn't seen an offense like us. Well, it looks like they didn't see a defense like this. I mean,
that was crazy. But shout out to Flip and Reedsville for their great performance. Headed on the state again as they normally do. Let's stay in the 336 area. Grimsley, we got Jakarian Maynard. This senior rushed 10 times for 99 yards, and Friday's 28-27 come from behind win over Weddington. Excuse me. Grimsley ran 45 times for 228 yards. Of course, after Weddington took away receivers Terrell Anderson and Alex Taylor, again, too high structure. We know Garner is, as an offensive guy, see too high, running the ball. So Jakarian has been a factor of that. Let's talk about what you see from this running back.
Yeah, I think he did a great job of doing what the coach is asking because we've been highlighting their sophomore for so long. This guy says I can run the ball too in their 20 personnel, 21 personnel sets that they were doing. And I think he did a great job of carrying out the game plan because even though they're playing it with a 7-man box, Weddington, they're still tough and they're very sound in their gap scheme. So be able to get those tough yards, he did that. And you obviously can see that 1 yard away from that buck. But, we'll take it 10 times, pretty efficient, almost 10 yards a carry. Pretty good stuff.
Definitely. Let's go up to Denver, North Carolina up there, and Tyler Mazzell and East Lincoln. In 14 games, not counting the win over South Point, he'd completed 66% of his passes, throwing for 2,368 yards and 35 touchdowns with only 4 interceptions. He had officially 99 times, 584 yards, and 14 scores. He leads a high-powered offense is averaging 39.4 points per game. That's big time.
I mean, this guy's the unsung hero of this team. He's a guy that's managed the games, not made mistakes. Like you said, very minimum interceptions, but he has a burst. When he puts his foot in the ground, he can go. Got a nice whip on the arm, but he makes plays when he had to make plays. And the moment never got too big for him in these playoffs versus these big opponents that he was going against. Now they're going to a state championship, and he's going to probably try to put a ring on his finger.
Definitely. I mean, they've had a big-time performance and played well all year. And, they get the spoils for the ultimate prize of the state championship. Let's go down east to New Bern. Damari Tucker, big rushing and passing touchdown in a 35-27 win over Millbrook. Again, while Millbrook seemed to outgain them and were able to make some big time plays and really had a chance to win at the end, or at least tie it to force overtime, Damari was one of the guys that really kept that New Bern ship afloat and really made sure that they were doing well. We talked about Aaron Herring all year. This is the guy leading this big time offense, and glad we get to highlight him here.
Yeah, this is great, and to be able to weather that storm, because when Millbrook, when they catch fire, they're tough to stop, and they were able to sustain that and win this game. That was big. I'm excited to see. I think this is going to be a great 4A state championship versus them. And, Grimsley, I think it's going to be a tough show. Both grimy type teams, both of them get after on both sides of the ball. So it's going to be a good state championship. This guy did a great job.
Oh, agreed, 100%. I mean, we get no surprise as to see why they were so successful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Griner, I mean, that's it. That's another edition, 2022 finale of Fresh Faces. It's been a pleasure to do this with you, brother. It's been a great year, and I feel like we've highlighted some great guys that not only have been starring this year, but I think next year you'll see these names in some of our other different segments, Players of the Week, Grice's Gems. So I love this segment and how we're able to highlight everybody, again, as we say, from Dare to Cherokee, from Murphy to Manio, Griner.
All right, man. Hey, there you sit. You and I in the 3-shot. That could only mean one thing. Hey, there we go. Let's flip it around. Put me here in the middle where I belong, between my two really good friends, Coach Griner, Coach Grice. Hey, one final time this year, 2022. Let's do it. Let's lock the door.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome.
All right, man. Hey, here we are. We've made it through another season. Seems like we've been back in August. I can't believe it's already pushing. It is December, and we're looking into state championships. But we're going to do it one final time, coach versus coach. Hey, Coach Griner, I love that jacket. You really look fly tonight, man.
What is that, velvet?
I don't know what it is, but it's pretty. It reminds me, and you'll know what I'm talking about, that white suit you wore to the state championship press conference back in 2015.
I'm hoping I get to bring that thing out again one day. We'll see.
And you even did a wardrobe change that night and showed up in another suit somewhere else. I remember. All right, Griner, are you going to defer?
Yeah, we're going to defer. I'm going to let my man, try to run the ball, the buck sweep a little bit this time. It's late in the year. He can't throw the ball. It's wet outside.
He can't.
See what's going on.
He can. All right, Coach Grice, this one here is for you. First question here tonight, coach versus coach. Should star players play in college bowl games or sit out and get ready for the NFL draft? Come on, tell me what you think.
Hey, I know I got a bunch of old school guys over here. Look at the hair, but they need to sit out. I do not care about your buddy. You want your guy to play in the Gasparilla Bowl over here, which my Wake Forest Demon Deacons are in. If one of those guys wants to go get ready for their pro job and be ready to play in the NFL and get ready for all the draft hullabaloo that they have to deal with, sit out the freaking Meineke Car Care, Pets.com, New York Armed Forces Bowl. I'm okay with you doing that. This bowl doesn't do anything but maybe pad the coach's pocket a little bit. No one sits there and talks about, but us winning that national title, wow, we really were buoyed by our win in the freaking Duke Mayo Bowl. One, I got dumped mayonnaise all on my coach. That led us to the national championship. That is something, again, the guys that want to be in that game, they're the ones that are going to play. Give that sophomore some time who hadn't played. Let him go play his heart out and be an unsung hero and go get ready for the next year. So get those guys out that are done. A lot of times their mind is distracted on some other things. Go get ready for what's next in your life, man. I'm not holding you hostage to win some meaningless bowl and get Griner some Cheetos and Cheez-Its dumped on his shoulders.
Well, I got mixed feelings here. It just depends. Like, if you're a top 3 round guy, I can understand that because you're making millions and millions. But that's that projection that you got to be able to see. I think since we're in the era of the NIL money, I think that, the occasional gift card from, Cheetos or, whatever the case may be that these kids are getting, we need to give them a little bit more now and then entice them to play. So we have NIL capability. The kids can take money. So I think if you want to play in a bowl game, what's wrong with like a quick $10,000 or something of that nature? That if you're based upon a certain caliber player, you should be able to get money to play in the game and do sponsorships leading up to the game. And so that might make some of these guys not sit out. And I think that'd be kind of cool to see.
All right. I, being the old guy on the staff, I kind of agree with you. I mean, I agree with both of you. The part of me, honor your scholarship, honor your commitment. But you know what? You better get ready and prepare and get yours when you get to that draft, because we know how cutthroat the football business is. And that means a lot more to their families as well. So I can appreciate both of your stances. But anyway, Coach Griner, we're going to stick with you here in this next question. Will Deion Sanders and Matt Rule succeed at Colorado and Nebraska here starting next year?
I think Deion Sanders will definitely, because of the recruiting aspect. Deion Sanders, he gets a lot of heat from, different fellas. Grice might be feeling some type of way. He always talked about, I am SWAC and I'm this and I'm that. Deion Sanders just does 100%. Whatever he's in, he's 100% giving everything he possibly can. I think he evaluated the situation, and I think that he's at a place where he will be successful, and there's people already committing to him. He has his own stage, and he highlights any program he's at, and he does his job. Like Colorado, how many people talk about Colorado? They'll be talking about Colorado going forward. Matt Rule takes a little bit different approach. He's more behind-the-scenes type guy. I think that he was built more for college. Some of his ways defensively I like, but it wasn't going to be a fit long-term in the NFL, the way that he uses their bodies and whatnot. It's more of a capability in college. I think he'll be successful, and going to Nebraska will be kind of a good fit, but he will have to create and get some more athletes there than what Nebraska is being able to get. Being at Baylor before, it was a little bit easier for him to get the athlete, but Nebraska is going to be a little bit tougher to get a little bit more of the explosive guys, but they'll be tough in the trenches, stopping the run and that nature. But if you had to make me choose one or the other, Deion Sanders by far in this one.
I like this question. I don't know if Gary, whoever wrote it, was a pretty good question. I think both are going to have their initial challenges. I think, I wanted to tell Gary the joke, is Deion going to say to Dan Lanning after he gets smacked by Oregon in that first game that he ain't Pac-12 or Pac-10 or whatever they are, as they lose 60-24 or whatever Oregon does to him in that year one. I do think that those challenges for Deion early on are going to be there. I think that he's going to be more than capable of getting them better very quickly. But I think the biggest thing that I'm interested to see and how he's going to handle maybe the initial difficulties with playing a big time Power 5 schedule and having to start so far from the bottom. And I think that's going to be some of the things of how Deion handles that. Is he going to be too quick to utilize the portal? The portal is great to get better quickly, but is that the fail-safe answer in order to get your team better? Or would that be development? That's going to be, I think, the piece or the critical component for him. Whereas, with Jackson State, it was a little easier to be better in recruiting immediately. It was a little easier to utilize the portal to help there. I mean, you're getting guys in the portal, but so are Georgia, so are Oregon, so are some of those other programs, and guys that are really having success. The coach at Oregon State, watching them just run all over Oregon this year and show their improvement. There are a lot of teams, and as I like to say, the neighborhood's changed a little bit in the Pac-10, Pac-12, whatever they're going to be going forward. And I liken that to Coach Matt Rule. I think in Nebraska, with them, having to deal with the BIG, the Big Ten there, and having to recruit in those different environments as well. Getting that team better quickly. I think, we're in spaces where teams want to be better now. And when they're putting this kind of money into both of these coaches, I think they're a little more long game as far as getting better. And we want to see what they can do quickly and if they're able to handle a few difficulties early on.
Hey,
Who's better? I want to know who Grice thinks has a more successful year next year.
Next year, Deion Sanders, long-term Matt Rule.
Hey, here's my thing. Do any of you guys remember the 5th down against Nebraska? Anybody of you do we remember? I know you guys, you're a little old enough, Grice, but you remember Cordell Stewart? You remember Slash, Pittsburgh Steeler? Yeah. That I'm going back to the last times Colorado was relevant. When Cordell Stewart was quarterback, they had that 5th down against Nebraska in like 89, 90. I remember Colorado being a national champion there. I think it was 89 or 90. But for the first time since a long time, Colorado's relevant again. And I think we can all say Coach Prime's got a huge, huge deal. Part of the reason that just for showing up. So I think it's going to be fun to watch. And I do think that Coach Prime is going to get them on the right track. So, hey, we'll see. Hey, final question. Coach Grice, we're going to stick it with you here. Hey, Coach versus Coach. This is the last round here of the 2022 season. Will the CMS team make a title run in 2023, or are we still going to see this drought, no CMS team in the state championships?
Oh, we're coming back. I mean, I think, you talk about this area again. I think everybody wants to talk or kind of look at what wasn't done as opposed to what was done. I mean, I think you have one of the best teams in the mountains in a little while in AC Reynolds. I thought they did well there. You look at Grimsby and East Forsyth. I mean, having two powers and two teams that are that good. I mean, what a combined 29 and one, I guess the two teams or whatever the records between East Forsyth and Grimsby were. I don't know if we've seen both of those teams that good at that level at the same time. You look at just everything around. I mean, the neighborhood changed. I like to say a little bit. I mean, a lot of the area teams that are 4A just were that much better. You look at just how close, though, individually in 3A and 4A we were. You look at Griner and West Charlotte. I think if you give him a junior quarterback instead of a freshman, I think he's playing East Lincoln that next week potentially. You look at a situation in which Independence, maybe Justin Little as a senior, gets that game done. I mean, there's so many. And again, the Huff Grimsby game literally was a 3 overtime game. So we're really splitting hairs when we're talking about teams not making it or not being there. And I just have an interesting feeling that Chambers is going to find a way to make sure they're back in the conversation very soon. Under first-year coach this year, Brandon Wiggins. We saw a lot of herky-jerky stops and starts, but definitely a lot of promise from them. And I think CMS as a whole in 3A and 4A is going to find a way to make sure we're back in the picture.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Charlotte Mecklenburg schools are here to stay. We are going to be competitive every year just because of the capabilities. We said at the beginning of the year that we thought everybody was diluted a little bit more than what it's been in the past, and we still made some of the runs. I would say if you still go back, they're still the most talented teams are probably still in the CMS, and they fell short this time. And even, you're considering the Weddingtons and stuff like that, they're surrounding the area, Cleveland County, everything's coming around this area and it's spreading out just a little bit. We always adapt and get better. And, speaking for ourselves, I mean, I expect West Charlotte to be making a run, like Grace said. I mean, that's our expectations next year. I think this will be our first, our third full year being there. And I think this is the time we feel like who we really are. And being battle tested in our conference, I think it'll be exciting to see where we go.
Sam, where's that flamboyancy? I threw that softball up for you. I expected you to say, hey, we are going to be there next year.
I've learned in my ways with the gray hairs and stuff and the stress and the people, the hate can be real. People talk about Instagram and followers. We need to have another thing called haters, and I'd have the lead by far.
Haters fuel me, man. Haters fuel me. I've had my share over the days. I teed you up. I want you to go all the way. Hey, Independence Patriots. I'm going to write it down. They'll be there.
They play us week 3, so we'll see what they're about too.
Ooh. All right, man. There you have it. Hey, coach versus coach. How's it? Hey, we got the boss man back on the show.
I want to put Gary in the shot because I'm just dying to hear what he has to say about Dion. Just ignore the matter. Tell me about Dion.
Well, as far as their debate is concerned, I agree that Dion is going to have more early success. I don't think his success will be long term because I don't think he's going to stay at Colorado past 3 years. I think he's going to get a bump to either the SEC or Big Ten. SEC is more likely because they don't have any scruples in the SEC. But people have to understand that, I read a lot of posts this week about, Dion betrayed HBCUs. Well, first of all, they need to get out of that victim mentality. He did more for HBCUs than they could afford to ever pay for. The Fortune 500 companies he got to advertise with HBCUs, not just Jackson State, but the SWAC, and the attention that he brought, the free publicity that he brought. They need to be saying thank you. That's what they need to be doing, saying thank you, instead of worrying about him leaving. Now, here's another problem. Now they're complaining about, well, he's taking all the players and all the recruits are decommitting. That's happening to multiple schools, not just Jackson State. That happens everywhere in this era of the transfer portal and NIL. There are kids that are chasing money. There are kids that are chasing playing time. There are kids that are chasing exposure to get to the NFL, and that's what they think he can provide to them. But one of the things that hadn't been written a whole lot is Deion's staff was vastly underpaid.
Yeah.
And going to Colorado allows his staff to get paid, to make six figures as assistant coaches, as opposed to $30,000 or $40,000 that they were probably making at Jackson State. It allows his family to feel safer. Deion's kids have been, I won't say robbed, but they've had their cars broken into. He's had his office broken into. Jackson is a very dangerous place. And if anybody listened to his press conference, the first thing not the first, but one of the things he mentioned is there was no crime.
He mentioned that about 5 times. It wasn't once. It was like,
yeah, he said, and that's very important to him, the safety of his family, especially with his son getting $1 million NIL agreement. Okay. Then the last thing is, I think he recognized that his son played just as well as these other quarterbacks around the country, and nobody was talking about him for a Heisman Trophy, or getting an invitation to the Heisman ceremony this weekend. And he realizes that in order to get that for his son, he needed to be at a Power 5 school. One of the things that the NFL would have probably used against his son is, well, he wasn't playing against the level of competition at the FBS schools and the Power 5 schools. So he also did this for his son. So there are multiple reasons that he left, and I'm happy for him. I think once his son graduates and goes on to the NFL, then and if he has success at Colorado, then he will go to the next.
Grice and I have had many conversations about this. I feel a little bit more like Gary. Grice sent me a Bomani Jones quote, a clip today that I really agree with. I think Grice is the Bomani Jones of this show, Bomani Jones of this state. Actually, I want you to let it go and say what you really believe, right? Don't give me the TV slate version.
No, he won't give you what he feels. He won't
say what you really feel.
Go ahead.
Langston, you can fact check me because we've had these real discussions. I just completely believe that people misunderstand what Deion said himself or didn't listen. And I think that's been the biggest part, is people that weren't paying attention to HBCUs having opinion on something that they didn't pay attention to anyway. We didn't ask for this. And I think that was the biggest problem. If you go back and look at the Pivot podcast, Deion chose to go on there himself. He stated his initial goals were, it's not about the money. He wanted to, quote unquote, transcend the HBCUs, get corporate dollars, sponsorships, pro level attention, to do all of these things for his players, that he was called to do this. We didn't ask for this. My school has been on the ABC in their last game of the year for the past 4 years before this. My school, North Carolina A&T, has been able to transcend and go on to different conferences. We did it the right way. When we were at our highest, we accepted bids to go to FCS schools to raise our profile and have done so. There are different ways to do this, and I think everyone looks at Deion as their favorite rich uncle, rich cousin that you can't talk about because he's the one that has the money, and he came here and said, God, as Bomani stated too, is God called him to do this. We didn't ask for all of this stuff. It got people who are ignorant of the HBCU culture, lifestyle, and how everything goes to say, oh, he's doing things that hasn't been done. He's put games on ESPN. I've watched my team play on the ESPN for the past 5 or 6 years. And not just ESPN 3, I'm talking ESPN 2 and ESPN. That he's not doing anything with Jackson State that's different. They have a 70,000 seat stadium. Whether they're not an SEC school, they have a stadium capacity in SEC country. And I think too many people are ignorant as to what HBCUs already had, that they saw one guy do one thing for his school and thought he did great. He wasn't the best coach, or wasn't close to the best coach with the best 3-year run in HBCU history. He might win. Well, if he would have stayed, he might have won one Celebration Bowl. He has not won his Celebration Bowl in the 3 years that he was there, which is the quintessential national championship game for HBCUs. So no, he did not have major success. He threw a little bit of his money in, got everybody excited, and now he's going away to the worst job in Power 5 football. I think those are some of the things that people are looking at. Again, we're not mad, but don't come and tell me you're here and God has called you to save us and then leave at the first sign of a mediocre Power 5 job because you want more money. Come in the game.
He said God called him up there too.
Come in, exactly. And maybe God, somebody said it first. Maybe God wanted 10% of $3 million rather than 10% of 300,000. That is not my choice. I agree with that quote, but that is not my choice. Again, don't come in here and say you're a savior, and then all of a sudden God called you to do something else. Just come in here and look to go on and be about yourself. But again, I forgot Prime's favorite song. His song that he created and let us all know about.
Must be the money.
Must be the money.
All right.
I love Coach Prime. I think he's
I do too. I do too. Guys, this has been a lot of fun. Alex, did you have any famous last words in 30 seconds or less that you wanted to say?
I just think we all need to keep in mind that ultimately we need to ask ourselves, what will we do in that situation?
Take the money.
And we can talk about the legitimacy or the standing of the Colorado job. We can talk about that. We all feel certain ways that we do. And we all have perspectives on that, and that's fine. But I just think that we always just stay true to ourselves. What would we do in that situation? And we don't have to answer it. You don't have to answer it.
Oh, no. I want Cam to answer it. Cam, you making $300,000 off of you $5 million. What you gonna do?
See ya.
I think Deion. I mean, a lot of guys, Grice, say, I'm happy to be here. This is my dream job. When they do the press conference, and we hold them accountable to that 3 or 4 years later, and I think that kind of becomes the issue to me. Because you're not going to come in and say Colorado's a stepping stone. I'm just waiting for FSU to open up. That's what Deion's thinking. But he's not going to say that.
Didn't he say he had $40 million? He didn't need the money.
He said
wasn't that one of the things he said? Didn't he say no? So I would not run if I walked in with a purpose in my goal. I don't think any of it. You don't do that if you've got integrity. Now, if you're building to go to the next step, which is what I think he was doing.
But I think sometimes, Dale, you can get into a situation that's not necessarily what you thought it was going to be.
I think 300,000 versus 3 million, you'd be about ignorant.
They're breaking into my house. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it just some of that kind of changes the equation. I don't know.
And I go back to family more than money. I mean, do you know how hard it is to live in Jackson, Mississippi?
He knew that when he went there.
Yeah, but he didn't know how hard it was going to be.
There's no excuse. That's not it.
But Dale, have you ever visited somewhere, Dale, and thought it was okay, but then you stay there for a while and it's like, nah.
What was Jackson?
I know Gary talking about ain't much better.
I drove through Jackson, Mississippi on the way to Dallas. And that was
me.
Do y'all realize that Jackson, Mississippi doesn't have running water on a consistent basis?
Hey, did he not know this when he went there?
I'm sure he didn't know about the running water.
This is the one aspect you guys are missing on the whole deal. What is the one thing about Prime or Deion Sanders that you're missing? He is one of the most competitive people you ever meet in your entire life. He was great at everything he did. He was the best and probably still is one of the greatest players of all time in football and a two-sport athlete, obviously, him and Bo Jackson. So everything he did, he was great at it. So he's going to talk what he feels in his heart and hit those goals hard. Once he got into the college atmosphere, he realized the highest aspect of college is winning a national championship, correct? You're not going to do it at that school that he was at before. All right, you can't recruit to the talent. Now he's trying to get into another step. It comes a competitive aspect too. Yeah, he's going to talk about the money and things of that nature, but I think he's looking at it as a competitive aspect. He's going to one of the worst programs, like you said, Grice, in Colorado in Power 5. But I think his ultimate goal is to win a national championship. And I think that you might see him eventually at Florida State, and he'll probably be able to do that. But he is good at what he does. He does run his mouth a lot, and he gets caught in some of his words because he does talk a lot. But
because you're not.
Let me tell you, the ultimate
so either God didn't tell him to do that because God his plan that he laid down, he's not followed. So,
no, I'm telling you, I'm telling you, in his spirit, he feels like the way his spirit moves.
He's lied.
I'm telling you, man.
Who are we to judge that, though?
All right.
I don't I don't question a man's faith.
No,
that's the
no,
perfect
that's
reason to
no
use
one's
it.
judge.
Like, that's the
Well,
perfect
then
reason.
don't use it in that manner. You know,
Well-
you don't come out and say, my faith told me to do this, and this is what I'm going to do because this is what I was told to do. And then, I'm only going to do this much of it because something better's
I
coming.
don't know.
I thought he
Who's to
did
say
what
he
he
did
said.
all that
he
much
was
of it?
gonna do.
I think times change. I just think times change. I think we can't
That's
always
fair.
hold
That's
somebody
fair. Leave.
what they said 3 years ago.
I'll take the job.
Matt Rule said that Carolina was the perfect fit 3 years ago. He said Nebraska was
That's
the
a perfect fit is not saying that I was called to do this.
Well, I will say this. I will say this. Two things. To the point of winning a national championship, let the record affirm winning a national championship. There is what is called the Black College Football National Championship, which is afforded an honor bestowed in the old school style that the national championship was bestowed as rankings were ended up, and he never won that, so he could win a national championship there. And furthermore,
you get to choose.
He's gonna go to Florida State and win a national championship. He didn't win one at Florida State as a player, so why does he think it's going to happen there?
God did.
I think people hate
Not
it.
God did.
Y'all
it's time to put the star. It's
saying
time to put the big star. This one shot. We're gonna get out of here.
They playing for it Saturday, the national championship.
He's not there. Real.
He is there.
I mean, I just didn't get to speak on one aspect earlier, and I wanted to mention it. Is it 85 scholarships in Division I football right now?
Yes,
FBS.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so something to attack the portal aspect in high school kids. I think that there should be some type of percentage. If you take a kid in the portal, before a kid gets in the portal, they need to go through some type of class to tell them the repercussions of going in the portal. You might not get to another place. They need to be able to be told that. Everybody thinks that, well, someone else will take me. That's not the case. It happens more than not. The other thing is to entice these colleges to reach into high schools as well, instead of everybody just going into this transfer portal deal, which is killing the game. I think that you should get actually more scholarships capabilities if you're going into high schools. So say you might get 95 scholarships if you have a certain percentage that you're getting high school kids. If you're doing more portal, there should be some type of, there's people smarter than me that can figure that out easily. But I think there'd be a percentage type deal where we're going to get high school kids and you get more scholarships for that compared to, like, if you do go in the transfer portal, you're only getting this amount. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Right.
I don't
Hey,
know.
Sam,
Sam,
let me ask you a question, Sam. Have you had any college coaches? Because I've had a couple call me, and I hadn't coached football in 2 years, but I've had a couple of college coaches call me to want to know if I've had any former players that want to transfer. So that's a new recruiting thing that they're doing now. They're going back to high school coaches, but not for high school players, but for players that those high school coaches coach who are currently in college who might want to transfer. They're using that.
That's what I'm saying. It's a different beast, and we haven't even seen how bad this is going to get. It's going to get worse for the next 3 years unless something's changed. And it's killing high school kids. And you had this on top of the COVID year as well. It's brutal right now.
We could do a whole show on the effects of the
no, you can.
COVID.
And the one thing that is and I forgot to mention this, the one thing that would be very successful, the kids that are not hurting as bad are the kids that are high academic kids, like kids that have well over a 3.0.
Yeah.
It's not affecting them as bad. But you're talking about those bare qualifiers that might be great athletes or whatnot that, you had a kid that had a 2.6, 2.7, he's a great player and he always was going to college before. It's hurting those kids because they're getting outbidded by the transfer guys.
Yeah.
But if you have a kid that has a 3.4, 3.5, you have those bigger or those higher academic schools coming in and they're trying to develop kids and not do the quick fix. There's a big difference. Like Davidson, we had a kid sign with Brown. You're seeing it not affecting those type of kids. So if you want to make a factor, and it should always be education, but it's even more so now than what it was before.
I also learned how to kick a football. Kickers are getting recruited like crazy. Guys, I want to say thank you. It's been a great year. Tim Pride gave you guys a shout out. I forgot to put it on the screen because I was doing basketball in the back when Guru was driving. So enjoyed watching you guys. Karen Belk, our biggest fan. Great show, guys. Very informative. Alex, can you say goodbye to Karen? You see her next fall
on Saturday.
Karen, we appreciate your viewership. We appreciate your kind words. We appreciate your heart for education and teaching and learning and serving young people, and truly hope that your passion for young people is something which you emulate and something to be followed by all who support not only what we do, but support all of education-based athletics. So please keep it up, continue that spirit, and join us back here as always on Talking Preps.
Absolutely. And also Gary Ashley said good show to watch. It is a good show to watch. I get to watch it a lot in the back. It is a good show to watch. We'll be back with basketball in January. I think January the 9th is the first show. We're going to Mondays in basketball season. We'll have Gary be back. Alex will be back. Cam will be back. We'll have the other guru, Rick Lewis, Randall. Rod Pfeiffer's going to join us this year. I know a lot of guys in the East know Rod Pfeiffer, so we should have a lot of fun. These guys will be back in August, I believe. And we'll kick off show again. Guru's going to drive next year. I'm going to sit more and more in the back and let Guru drive it. He does such a good job. Man, I enjoy this show. This is like I've worked a long time in this business. This is probably one of the most enjoyable things I've done since I've been in the business. And it's all because of you guys. So thank you very much. With that is Coach Sam Griner of West Charlotte High School, the one everybody loves to hate. That is the Guru, of Voice of High School Football. That is Cameron Williams, the Guru in training. Cameron did a great job this year and you took a beating from the guys and you kept coming back. So I appreciate that. Dale Ross, as we talk about all the time, you don't talk about CMS football. Nobody knows it better. Gary Richmond, the coach. I mean, you heard his commentary tonight. I mean, he does a phenomenal job. Alex Bassett-Contrarian, got to have that opposite viewpoint, Eastern specialist. And then Jonathan Grice, who I just think is supremely talented, the number 2 voice high school football, the Bomani Jones of North Carolina. I think he's phenomenal. I'm Langston, and we are Talking Preps.
Hey, Langston, you also need to tell your viewers that I'm in first place in our Talking Preps Fantasy Football League, too.
There it is. Gary's in first.
Tell him your name. Tell him your name.
We'll catch y'all next fall. Later.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see you guys. Love y'all. I got to make a